And then start. Go over some stuff. Okay, I'd like to call it order the comprehensive plan committee for 8 AM. We have a hard stop at 11. At least I do. You guys are welcome to keep deliberating.
Oh, holiday.
Yeah, but I've got to be at another meeting in Madrid at 11:30, so. Today we're going to be going over a few of the chapters that were there. Donna should be here hopefully soon. And I want to talk a little bit, we were chit chatting just to get started casual now. Probably have a little official chit chat of how to be the most efficient for these 3 hours. So one of the things I'd like to kind of talk about is, I think the lens that we should go through for today is a content lens. Not worrying about Oxford commas and double spaces and that stuff. We will see that on the next round, but we need to clearly go through with that lens of those of us who've done observations with what's going to happen in relation to what needs to be updated in those pieces, and then leave the editorial adjustments for Donna after the fact. So let's try to focus our discussion on that. The second thing that I thought about or suggested that I thought might make sense is we've got somebody with fast fingers who wants to sit with one of these pulled up, so we can add some additional notes or whatever right into that there, so that it's easier for Donna and her team to be able to go over that after the fact. So nothing gets lost in translation. I have full confidence that nothing will, because Donna's a professional, but nevertheless, I just thought that might make sense to do. If we don't want to do that, then I guess we can make some notes, but I just thought if somebody is able to do that, it might make us be able to go through as efficiently as possible. So, anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Well, you have an outline.
I have an outline for the day, right?
Okay.
Cause it's the highlights that I wanna point out to
Yep.
you.
Let's go.
Can
Where is that?
It would be easier if you could screen share through Zoom.
Yes, that'd be easier.
Plugging direct kind of meddles with the
Yeah.
recording process.
Right.
Okay, so you, go into Zoom and screen share. Like we have.
Where's that outline? Will you email that?
I don't have.
Do we have a copy of said outline?
No,
No,
I
you
just
did.
did it
Okay.
yesterday.
Can you email it to Joe and he can print it?
You're gonna put it up on the screen.
Email it to me, I can put it on the screen.
Joe brought donuts.
I was up all night.
And even better, Wendy brought muffins. I tested both.
Joe.
You know, I'm in a big
Best way.
frame of mind, Christmas coming.
There
I made 500 napkins yesterday.
Okay, so Donna, I don't know if you heard this, you came in, but I have to leave at 11.
Yeah, and I have a time schedule on this and I am sorry.
All right, was that sent to us yesterday? I didn't see it.
No, I
She said
just
she
did it yesterday.
it.
And so, because what I wanna do, I have it set up that we talk about the harder stuff first, right?
Yeah, it makes sense, if we run out
Yeah,
of time.
so that as we run out of time, we're
Okay.
getting into the lighter stuff.
All right.
And I, met with, and so I have some new things to talk about, things that we haven't talked about before, which was the, future land use plan. Breck and Joe and I talked about, a few different options that you might wanna think about. Breck, do you have those, zoning maps?
Joe's got them, yeah, they're right there.
Oh, the zoning map fees.
Joe's got it, I thought you had it on the computer earlier.
I believe.
Yes,
Yeah. How many, want me to speak much for everybody?
okay.
This is not the one we scribbled on.
And I, because I know what I.
This is not the one we scribbled on.
Okay, oh, yeah. Okay, so. the future land use plan are things where we talk about growth areas, and residential growth, commercial growth,
Right.
and making potential expansions or whatever
Yeah.
to. So, one thing that, we have this little area here, so this is, Boone Lake Road.
Yeah, the airport.
Yeah. And there's this residential surrounded by this woodland. And it is, odd. And there is a tremendous amount of development, residential development. I mean, this is not.
Well, that's been approved for years, it's
It
finally, the
has.
market's allowed it to adjust, but we don't know if that's gonna happen for them.
Ranging north.
Yeah,
Right.
so that was approved forever ago.
Holy Hannah.
Yeah, but it's,
Been on the book since 2008, the economy finally allowed it to adjust.
so do we just leave it the way it is at Woodland? Now, with Woodland residential, you have two different minimum lot sizes. Residential's 40, Woodland's 80. What Woodland also allows are things like, you could have right in there, just a storage building, no, there's no requirement, so. Do we wanna look at turning this into something different?
Well, the
So
only
this
issue
is
that
this is commercial.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought there was an industrial.
that's the whole airport industry.
well, this is
No, but
all over, yeah.
I thought. Okay, never mind, let's just stay on topic. I thought there was a portion of Rangeley North that had been,
It's been a mine,
well, it is,
Yes,
they
I-
they have retained mineral rights.
yes,
So for future,
right.
yeah, so the whole area
So the
is.
problem I have with that is that there was a lot of money that was invested in that, a lot of town went through that and agreed on the zone structure that was there.
Yeah.
Kind of everything was kind of horse traded to agree to the density in those deeds
Yeah,
back then. And I think if we mess with the zoning now, and we're already dealing with, to be frank, a business that already went to battle all the way to the Supreme Court with the town, I think it's the third rail that we don't need.
Okay.
I agree, because I mean, these are all private roads as well that
Yeah,
were
there's a huge amount
established
of
for that
development.
type of, yeah.
Right, if they all of a sudden we
I
start
think
messing with
it's a
these.
great, it's a great thought.
So my concern, I'm a little product.
Okay,
My concern has been Carl and I have had these discussions. In woodlands, you can fence it and put horses or cows in there. You can put pigs in there. And do people in a residential area wanna have their neighbor?
Have you read over the Rangeley North, restrictions on the subdivision?
Yeah, we've been looking at that, but you know how,
Well, no, I've read through all of them, and I have a copy of it, but I think if this was before this whole subdivision and got approved and all that stuff, it'd say fine, but I said, it's already been approved, if we start messing with the zoning, then I think you're gonna end up tying up the resources of the town to such a point that it won't benefit anything else that we wanna look at.
And we had that conversation
Yes.
about
Okay.
making a lot of things non-conforming
Yeah.
and, but we wanted to have a conversation with you.
I think the only thing to do, if you've got some specific concerns that you think affect in that development that you will think will affect the general public with that, then I would suggest scheduling a meeting with the developers that are there and say, look, would you consider amending your covenants and restrictions that exist on all those lots and add these 4 or 5 things? And I think that would be an easier way to do it, almost like a spot zoning, than to go into doing this stuff. I think it's the third rail. I know that company well and that developer well. I was here for all the history of that. In fact, I moderated some of those meetings because the moderator couldn't do it, because he was representing the legal counsel.
Aside of everything he's saying, let me
Yeah.
just cut through and ask him a more succinct question. How does this impact the work we're doing with Colin?
Well, if we wanted to make a change to that, this would be the great time this would be a good time to do it, because then it would be in the plan, so when you go to do the zoning, it's backed up by the plan.
It's on the to-do list, basically, you know, as far as an action step on the comprehensive.
so you're not
But-
wrong. I was playing a little bit devil's advocate, because if I'm a homeowner, and I wanna purchase one of these lots,
I know.
and
I
I
just-
have a residential property, I want my property values to maintain themselves, and my neighbor comes into the woodland, oh, they're gonna raise pigs.
Yeah, but won't those people that buy those lots know that that's potentially the case?
That's-
And
that's
they
the-
are recorded.
That's a caveat out to her a little bit, and then if you feel that it's necessary, you can come up with some ordinances there that you require that people sign off that they've read through the restrictions before you issue their.
So in
As
terms
long
of
as
the
they have honest
comprehensive.
billboards,
Yeah.
and as long as they do their homework.
Well, it's a buyer beware scenario there, you know, you need to.
Everything is fire neighbor.
True, but I mean,
Right.
again, I get back to.
But there's a way from a town municipal standpoint that you could add to the building permit sheet to say that people acknowledge that they've read through the covenants and restrictions on it.
Yeah, well, that's getting.
Okay.
Detail if you.
I know, I don't wanna.
In terms of the comprehensive plan, because this is a vision, this is not, this is not a mandate. In terms of the comprehensive plan, maybe it should say something like, consider making amendments to the Woodlands District regarding residential and some of the other, when there are, I don't know how, I haven't had enough coffee to do this yet, but, that we can get something in the plan that that leaves the door open, but doesn't say we have to do it.
Donna, I like that, you could also, in terms of thinking 10 years ahead, you don't have to be restricted by language that we're using today, meaning woodlands. Like maybe something to consider would be create a new animal, because that is a parcel of land and it's nice to have open space in a residential area, but maybe you create a new terminology or a new district for that particular parcel, and maybe that would make sense in the future for other land use scenarios that we don't even know about today.
I think you could write a simple comment in that says, in areas where there's two different zonings within one development, consider finding a way to homogenize
Yeah.
or something.
So
It's
again, we're talking
In
about,
coordination with the developer.
Right.
we're talking 10 years out next.
No, I get it.
And
I think we got a bigger zoning one that I'd like
West
to address.
West side subdivision is almost maxed, ED is almost maxed,
I know,
Hilltop is gonna be maxed.
and the economy's about
And
to take a major turn,
I
because
see it.
I've been doing real estate since I was 20.
All right, so,
Okay.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll do vague language. And then if it comes up and it becomes a problem, there is vague language, but something that you can rely on to make changes.
I think you can cover it with you can say, look, in developments of which have more than one zone, there should be some discussion as to harmonizing
I got it,
between
yeah.
this. And I think if we leave it at that, it's pretty vague. There's another zone that I have, but point out whatever else you have.
So we've also talked about this industrial commercial zone right here, which is the airport and the sewage treatment plant.
Yeah,
And it's probably always just gonna be the airport and the sewage treatment plant. And it allows some pretty heavy duty stuff out here, and so I would suggest that we would change the zoning on this and allow it to be some sort of commercial, but, allow municipal uses, allow airports, allow,
where do you wanna put the industrial zone?
well,
We need to have.
what I would like to do is, I think that there is, we should get a different definition for industrial. That we have heavy and light. I would suggest that we go more light.
Well, see, I have a problem with that, because part of what we sold the bill of goods, when we did the expansion for the airport, was that we had the industrial zone that we were gonna allow to still have those type of uses. And we have no other place in town.
But there's no place in here now.
Yeah.
And now it's
But
completely
that
surrounded,
gives the town an
so-
option, if a major employer comes to town, the town owns the land, that they can parcel off some of the land
So
in order for a major industrial use to exist.
one place that we're looking at is right in here. So Quimby Farm Road, the dive facility,
Yeah, the midtown,
right in here.
yeah, that needs to be a commercial or a different use, so I don't have to bring every client in to do a commercial use.
And then you've got Route 4, which does not get posted, right?
Right,
No.
Because that's the key, that's
Right,
one of
to
the big
industrial.
keys, is that it doesn't get posted. So we just do it here. There's an opportunity to do this deep enough in here
I
that,
don't see it.
so deep meaning off the road,
Right.
that, it's not like in your face.
Well, there's only
industrial.
3 landowners in that particular area around there.
Today,
Craig Sargent,
today.
Right, so it's a good time to do it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's all easy. It's Larry Coop, well, now Wade. And then it's Quinn, who just bought the storage units too, that were McMillan's, and then Craig Sargent. And all 3 of those people, I think, are pretty easygoing about trying to figure out something there, because that's always been a problem. Greg's father's snowmobile shop started there. That was a commercial use that's been there forever. So we need to
Does
figure out.
can someone reach out to those, to
Yeah,
know
it's
those?
easy.
You wanna reach out to them and tell them, give them a heads up, because it's always rough when somebody finds out at a public meeting that they're, so.
No, I think we increased the zoning use of that as commercial. I've been begging for that for years.
So
because it's-
commercial that allows a light industrial.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what we needed for a while. There's 7 acres there. Quinn owns like 8 or 10 acres there. Craig owns 2 or 5, 3 or 4 there. It's a great little spot for it. It was called Midtown anyway.
Midtown, yeah.
It would solve some it would sure make it easier on this officer, because every time I have to come in, I have to say, here's
Okay,
the history, here's the thing, you gotta go to planning board, ZBA.
great. So I will work with Erica and Breck and Joe to put the property lines on and look at something that makes sense.
Is anyone opposed to that idea? Does everyone know what that is?
Yeah, you know.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the next one is right down in here. So this is the turn off to 16. It's
Essex
the,
Gates Field.
yeah, it's the
Field
landing area, and it's residential. And so there's some wetlands in there that you really don't wanna, you don't wanna mess with that, but a little node of commercial in here is what we're thinking. I mean, we've got the new parking improvements right there, so, there could be some places within.
Will that
within-
jive you mean commercial light industrial, is that what you're thinking, or just commercial?
I'm thinking like,
Just
I'm
commercial.
thinking more like downtown commercial. Or,
Well,
I don't know.
You got the tank depot there
yeah, right,
brand-
that's already, yeah,
And that's a light industrial use.
yeah.
But it's across the road, and that's really it's a spot zone really in a sense.
It is.
And-
I'd be really careful of impact on the water.
That's
in
what-
that
Yeah,
area.
I'm thinking the same thing. You've got some very expensive.
Sensitive.
Yeah, I don't think
properties and stuff.
I don't think we mess with that, other than,
I mean, you could maybe do mixed use, so
Yeah.
it's residential, commercial,
I
You know,
don't disagree.
but I
Cause
mean,
Mike's got that whole area at the back of the moon where he's actually been chipping away rock and cleaning up that.
and you're talking right around.
I think that's the
near-
parcel Don is talking
Yeah,
about.
that's
Yeah.
possible.
The
You're
Rangeley
talking about the
River.
back of the moon?
Yes.
Is it abutting the Rangeley River?
Is this the Rangeley River?
Yeah, because that's the north flowing Rangeley
Yes.
River that's really, really
So,
sensitive.
so the
Yeah,
problem
yeah.
is we've been keeping an eye on it. He can't be any closer than 75 feet, and he's stayed away. He's got erosion barriers up.
Yeah, he
in place.
does.
Okay.
I personally
And the
visited.
problem is,
Yeah.
most of that property is all wetland, and it's all resource protected out there.
Right, but he's got 100 and something acres.
Yeah, and then shoreline zoning is on top of that too.
Right.
And trust me, it's public record, but Mike understands what happens if you do your own thing.
But sometimes
Yeah.
land sells.
Yeah.
So Mike could be completely irrelevant to that property
Yeah.
in 20 years.
Correct.
So what I'm suggesting we do is turn this and include the commercial in here, this commercial strip, so there's just one district. The same thing down here, and then it has, it has the kinds of things that we think are appropriate. Would allow concrete, would allow, and sometimes we could say it has to be at least 300 feet from the road or something, so that it's not in your face,
When you
so,
say allow concrete, excuse me, but do you mean like a plant?
yeah.
That's
Okay.
heavy industrial. It's been
Yeah.
ruled by the Supreme Court. We know that one pretty.
Okay, so.
They had
So-
some pushback years ago here
Right.
actually about a plant.
It was light versus heavy, it went all the way to the Supreme Court.
But it would be beneficial going forward to have that somewhere, because whoever's building has
They've
They
already,
pay
they've
so
already
much
put,
money
they've
for
already
that.
put the plan out on 16 of their plan, which is what I told them to do. It's a long
So-
story, but they moved it out there years ago, and, it was such a pushback in town. We had two projects up on that hill, which were in the lighted, it was the light industrial, which is that little zone on the end of the commercial zone on Cemetery Hill, where Michael Haley lives, where the old. place is.
okay,
So
okay,
there's
so,
5 lots there that are light industrial, and they were originally gonna put a plant there. It was a huge legal battle on that, and it turned into a lease,
okay,
so.
so the next thing I wanna talk about is all of this woodland. Now, this is a really typical thing. You have the lowest density, the most rural parts of the town. It's where you have the bulk of the construction happening. And you have clustering on the books. It's there.
It's horrible.
It's there as, but it's there as an option, which is good.
But the map,
Well, okay, but what about requiring in the woodland district, so the more rural places, requiring clustering? Because part of the reason is you wanna have that open space, as a buffer, because the woodland district is very open. It
yeah.
allows a lot of different things.
So Don, I hear you on that, but I think my concern with that's gonna be is that I'm open to the whole idea. I love clustering, but we've got to do it in a structure that provides an incentive to make the developer want to be drawn to it. And we're not there with our current structure on the ordinance book.
Well, so
But
then
we-
that becomes a recommendation.
No,
Yeah, but I'm just telling you that no one's going to choose this as a functional thing. And we live in a town that votes 3-1 against more government intervention consistently in every election that's been done here
So,
in 25 years. So do we want to get into dictating that people are forced to do clustering versus developing it in a way that it's incentive to drive people to
Well,
do
we're
it?
not doing that.
well, the incentive for any developer is not have to build this along of roads, is not have to, which can save them hundreds of thousands of dollars and all a lot of design work and, you know, it's better for the water, it's better for the phosphorus, for everything to be able to do it compact. When they understand that, because I've been down this road a lot of
I
times.
understand, I've done this.
When they understand that, they're all for it.
Right,
So, because they also get that buffer that they can use, so maybe the recommendation is to update, and maybe, maybe the incentive is that they get a little more density, not 50% more,
no, there needs to
but,
be a density bonus tied to it.
but update,
But when we did when the 2012 plan was done, and no complaint here, but I harped on it for years, that 18 months after the comp plan was done, the ordinances need to be updated. They never got updated. 38 just got updated almost 10 years past, over 10 years past where it was supposed to get done.
okay,
So
so if
that's
we
my
update it
concern.
and we actually do it and we put it in there and we update the clustering, then what do you think about requiring this? So I think that there are two different,
Require is
Why
a tough
require?
word.
I think
That's
that's
the tough word.
Yeah, that's my,
yes, yes. So there are certain things now, like what we did in Freeport many years ago is we said, you have two options. You actually have three options. We did this expanded clustering so that you could get more. That was your incentive. You had the net zero density with the clustering. You had an incentive to do more. And if you didn't want to do that, you didn't have to, but you had to double the minimum lot size. So instead of doing 80,000 square feet for your density, you're now doing it by 160,000 square feet. So that is,
I mean, no offense, I don't think. I don't know.
And that always
Freeport's a
works.
good analogy to use.
it's an option. I'm telling it to you as an
Yeah, I
option
appreciate
if you want to, because that's where your development's happening. So if your development is happening out here, and you wanna, you wanna protect the look, you wanna protect the wildlife flux, you wanna protect the buffering, you wanna, because with clustering, here's the other incentive, is that you can set it up in such a way that forestry activities are still allowable in the open space. So, someone like Mark Beauregard, who wants to go out and develop, could still keep that as a woodlot.
Yeah.
But I think,
So,
but being someone who's sold 100 homes up here,
Oh my gosh,
I
yes.
don't get it. I think it's completely, it's Southern Maine bullshit. I have a real problem with it. Because to me, it's people
I don't-
buy up here to get the residential and to get away from
I
people.
think that,
It's
yeah,
not gonna
it kind of is not compatible.
It isn't.
With the feel, with the reason people move up here, one of the reasons. So the whole requirement piece, yeah, I
Well,
think
we
that's.
can't require anything.
well, no, I mean, we can't, the plan can't,
Right.
so instead, okay, so we can drop the require, because I understand that, I understand that. Well,
Oh, Jesus Christ,
You
come
know,
on.
you have to stop
It's
that.
all about your whole opinion of things. I mean, Jesus, you're back. I don't even want to hear 2012 again.
No.
I want to hear 20,
Well, Steve,
32.
Well,
Steve, I mean, how many times you, other than your guys' groups of people, how many people do you deal with? I deal with a large cross section of this town.
Well, I mean.
I get a
sit
lot
on-
of
I sit
input.
on 3 or 4
Perhaps.
boards in this town.
Chris,
Yeah, great. Well, that's all the little retiree people that don't have. The working people in this town want to be spread out and
Why
have
don't you
this.
why don't you just tell us what you'd like us to
Just,
do?
just.
That's
right.
fine, you can do whatever you want, it's just not gonna get
I
through.
mean,
This is
I'm tired of
it's a
hearing this.
vision.
Do you wanna get this plan through and approved, yes or no?
No, I don't care. If it
Okay,
gets-
well, then why are you here?
Approve on it.
Why are we here on the freaking
I
sidewalk?
want to be approved, but I
It's a
mean,
fight.
you know, it's not.
my job is to give you ideas.
It's
You
not
don't have to
for me.
take them, you don't have to take them, but my job is to come in from the outside and look at what's going on and give you some ideas to think about. If you don't want them, that's fine.
No, it's fine, but what I'm trying to say is that
So-
you're watching
so
this
is it-
develop and you think it's a bad thing when people are getting into these woodland areas, I don't think it's a bad thing.
So let me just say that one option in the middle, a compromise, is to update the clustering to include incentives so that developers, or I don't know why they don't like that as an option, I don't know why they haven't gone down that
Because the
road.
numbers, the way the current ordinance reads, don't work.
So if we fix that and that becomes an option that they like, it's a compromise. So I think that, should we stay away from require? I mean, that's a heavy hand with the regulation, I get that, but what do you think about just updating the clustering?
I think it's a lot to add at this point in time. I think if we just work through what's, what has been presented, and with what we've dealt with chapter 38 and land use was a huge component with
How many hundreds
planning.
of hours did we sit with 38?
With the code enforcement,
Yeah.
and I think, so the other thing, John, I think that's rough with, just with a historical perspective, is the fact that, we have been through a number of different code
Yeah.
enforcement officers in recent years. And so to, maybe it's not in this next comprehensive plan, or maybe it's just put on the radar, but as far as a suggestion to amend land use, that might be a little much right now.
But just to fix what's wrong with clustering?
Well, I think part of the challenge is that you guys see all this big boom of development. We've seen this before. This has happened 2 or 3 times and then the water.
Well, that happens everywhere.
Yeah, but then it's not like what happens in southern Maine. We're like at the end of a water system. Boston gets busy, then it travels up through and then it's
Okay,
there. And the
so-
first time, we're the last ones to get started with it, which is where we are now. And then it goes the other way quicker. So
Right,
what's
but
gonna
in the
happen?
next 10 years, there's gonna be another cycle
Mhm.
of something.
Well,
I don't know
it
why.
could be like what happened in 2006, where we had this
We
huge
could
push
have,
and then nothing happened for 10 years.
that absolutely could happen, but is that the opportunity to fix things? And all I'm saying is, if you're telling me that the clustering, it wasn't done right and the math doesn't work, then fix the math. That's all I'm saying. Don't
Yeah, I have
require.
no problem, if you wanna
just-
put a guideline in and say that there needs to be a revision done to the clustering in order to.
And you include it
To
in the
promote-
incentive.
To promote open space, I have no
Yes.
issue with that.
Okay,
But I think I have an issue when we start saying required,
okay.
because I don't
that's
think
fine.
people want that. If you live
Do
next
we
to.
feel like that as a group?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
I just would like to see what language we're talking about. I mean, I think we're arguing minutiae.
We're not doing
It's relevant
ordinance
to me.
language creation.
I know, we're just
Right.
setting sort of, broad scenarios that are possible, that type of thing. And
And,
just to consider these various things.
and it has
I
to
think-
be in the comp plan
Right, in order to be able to create it.
to
But-
have a discussion.
You guys, one thing I think to keep in mind, and the reason you might think I'm fighting over this language is because this language came down and it cost the town 2 years, couple $100,000. And the whole town was up in arms
What language
over
came
light,
down?
light and heavy industrial use and a few of these other things because it wasn't clear and the ordinances didn't match up. With the
Right,
comp
so
plan
we
and all
need
these
to fix
pieces.
that. What else in the ordinance is not clear that needs to be fixed, that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, a lot of
I mean, you
38,
worked on it, so
yeah.
what are the things?
well, I have no issue with the clustering. I think the wording there, I think when we get into start saying required and those types of
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
that are-
finish that. What else? I mean, are there other provisions in there that aren't quite right?
Well, I think we have a real mess with some of our downtown, we have a downtown commercial that we have, the ordinances. You can do pretty much anything you want within 5 feet of your land and those type of things, but then our village, which has a lot of tight lots, we have a 20-foot setback and some of these things, so. Something needs to be done to review the setbacks in relation to the density. And I guess that's a general way to say it.
Yeah,
Cause I live right in town and it's insane, everybody's houses, their buildings are within 5 and 10 feet. But you can't replace your garage because if you did, you got a 20-foot setback and all these things, and it just doesn't work for in town. We don't have to worry about wildlife impact, cause I have 6 deer that eat my pumpkins off my front porch.
yeah, and
Okay.
I think that's.
And that's
the biggest
more
leftover.
downtown, that's more downtown.
Yeah, that's one thing that didn't get addressed in chapter 17 was doing a full analysis of the setbacks. And I guarantee that's what Breck bumps up against the most on. And there's really not a vehicle to fix that or offset that.
I would agree with.
What about build two? Instead of setback?
Yeah, I mean, that's another option.
Build two, I like that. That's not a bad way to
It's a
put it.
different way of,
Yeah.
build or, navigating through a tight, tight village area.
And the one things that we could look at, for instance, like the old IGA building, that's eventually gonna get turned down, I hope soon, because we keep watching bus drives running there right now. And, to a developer, that's an incentive to say, like in South Portland, what they've done is they've done a 0 lot line. So what it did is allows a developer to come in like a Nightville. And they've allowed them to, in the heavily dense, where it's already buildings pretty much touching it, to let them build to that, to maximize so that they build a nicer product in there.
So Chris,
Yeah,
we have an owner of that building who has been in here 4 times. And we buck against the fact that we've got really tight lots.
right.
The fact that he doesn't want to rent business space because there's no rent business space.
Right.
He wants to make 3 apartments down below and 3 apartments up above, but because it's multifamily, it doesn't match the lot requirements and the
Right.
setback
And that's
requirements.
in
That's
the
where, right, and this
That's
is
the
where,
IGA building. He wants to do it, and he wants to put plans together, but he's up against restrictions, and we're trying to help him out.
and this is what I've seen across the country, and we've had these people come in and speak at the Marita conference and those things, and they show this cool, which range you can do on a smaller scale, it's called cool urban development, where you take these disastrous buildings, you remove them, and then you build something that solves the needs, which is apartment use, those type of things, and you incentivize the developer to be able to do it.
And the other problem, Chris, is he wants to demo the building, he has no parking.
Right,
The other problem.
That's the other.
but downtown, if
It's a
you think downtown
requirement.
commercial, parking's not a requirement, unless it's required on the
It's
residential
residential.
unit
It's
side.
required on
Yes,
residential.
units for the parking.
That's right.
Right, but that can be fixed in ordinance too, you say, right, I mean, those are the type of things, it's a mess.
Okay, so that's good, I have that and I will add that in. So, let me see, I think I covered what I wanted to cover in terms of the future land use, yes. Okay, let's jump back to just some really basics on what this is gonna look like. I think the existing plan has this start, each chapter has this start, and it says,
That's, background information.
yeah, it's got this,
This, this,
I just think we should simplify it. It has these findings and conclusions that have all these bullet points. I think we should get, they're random.
So are you suggesting to just take this
Get
off
rid of
the
that.
table and just start with the text?
Yeah, just jump into the background information,
Okay.
yeah, because the shorter we can make this, the better.
I don't disagree.
And so,
You get
whoops,
What?
and so we jump right into the background. And then each chapter would have, when we get done with the background, which will have a whole variety of things. Each one of the chapters at the end would have something that says like, looking into the future, or, I don't know, we can call it, we can call it whatever we want, but so long as it's consistent. And then we run into the chart. Now, there's a whole lot, I've been pulling in all of the policies that were from keeping the policies pretty much the same, actually keeping the policies the same.
Do you mean the presentation of them?
I mean, now I'm talking about both of them.
Where
So-
are you going?
So see, here's just, I just picked this, Steve, I'm sorry. So we have all of these, we have goals, and we have all these policies. I think that if I looked at the policies, I could probably condense them down into like 2 or 3.
Yeah, I don't,
Simplify, because sometimes there's 10 policies.
Right.
And like broaden them, simplify them, and then get into the table that has the ideas to
So,
consider.
can I just tell you,
Yes.
that I've written now, I'm in the process of writing the second one.
Yes, and you're doing a fabulous job.
Thank you. It's tedious, takes a lot of hours,
Does.
and writing I think the first section is the background, and the way I look at that is primarily it gets you to today.
Yeah.
That's really the goal. I mean, some of it's history to get a sort of sense of, real history. But then you get to leave it at today. So then we reach the point where we're talking about the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you that it could, trying to pigeonhole into the format from 2012 is kind of weird. It doesn't flow as nicely as that. So I would defer to your thinking on what makes it simplifying going forward. You could summarize the past to get to today using bullet points at the end, maybe. But if you don't do that, just make it narrative, then we gotta edit it down so people aren't reading books to get to there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the copy would be more concise to get to that point.
And-
And if we write each section with the history gets us to today. And keep
Yeah.
that thematically through everything.
Right.
That would be pretty clean. And then as far as how you want to project out the future, we're obligated by the state to address certain things
Yes.
in every section.
Yes,
we
and
know
we do that.
I know, so we know that's where it's all gonna start. And then it's, we're not assigning or mandating anything, as we've debated here this morning. But your thinking is that we're gonna put down, the goals of the next year, of next 10 years to address the state's objective in the plan?
Yeah,
pretty
so
much?
the state goal, and condense the policies into a few. And then the different ideas that you can think about. And what I've done is organize them in such a way that it keeps all of the ordinance amendments together, new ordinances together, and then, so that you're not saying over and over again, consider amendment to the
Right.
land use ordinance, because it's just a lot of extra language.
Yeah, it doesn't need to, I think less is more.
And so, let's make it a little more compact. I like doing everything in grayscale. We can go in color, but
Yeah,
you go in color and then it's harder to print and it's,
I think, I'm fine with
Okay,
grayscale.
okay.
Yeah.
So the other thing is,
Did you wanna talk, the only thing that I had, that I thought we did the first initial stuff here with the regional economy, I just had, my general notes about it I think the impact, not necessarily, I think it's a misnomer a little bit on the Saddleback with the tourism piece. I mean, it is an element, but our tourism balanced out. Our tourism balanced out because the snowmobile is filled in for what was there from the economic numbers, but the biggest thing I think it's not necessarily talked about, I think should be talked about in the beginning there is that, and you did outline a little bit with a comment, 32% of the jobs come from the restaurant, but I think the biggest impact that the mountain reopening was the job creation and job inputs that was there.
which section are you on now?
I thought we were talking on the economy.
No,
Oh,
I think
not
she's
yet.
talking about just
I'm
format.
just
Talk
talking
about
formatting,
formatting,
yeah, in
okay.
general. And then the other thing too, in terms of formatting, is that it is, the state says you have to cover all these things. It does not say you have to have an individual chapter for each thing. And like water and natural resources, they're all, water is a natural resource.
I was gonna mention that too, because
Yeah.
the water is really long.
Yeah, and let's keep it, let's
Yep.
pull them together. And Steve and I had talked about, because this is Rangeley, outdoor recreation and tourism and the economy, outdoor recreation is part of the economy.
Yeah.
And as is agriculture and forestry, and that we could combine all of those together into an economy section. We can still hit all the state goals.
Okay,
And,
I'm fine with simplifying.
but it simplifies and it can save us pages.
Yeah, one thing I was saying about outdoor resources, because that's the thing I'm working on right now, is I've taken great pains to not focus on economic aspects of outdoor recreation. Instead, catalog the outdoor recreation opportunities that exist and the organizations that are involved in managing and Range Lake Heritage Trust as an example. I spent a lot of time yesterday with those guys. And so I think
But they're struggling with the management of their stuff right now.
Well,
Not so much.
yeah, there's a, they're offloading some stuff,
Yeah.
but still, the point basically is that, the separation between outdoor recreation from an economic standpoint and outdoor recreation from the assets and.
No, I don't disagree, Steve,
So that's kind of what I'm going.
I went to the Maine, I don't know if you guys saw that, in November, there was a Maine Economic Outdoor Summit.
Yes.
I went to that.
Yeah.
And it was very
Yeah.
interesting. And one of the things I pulled out of it, which I think would make sense, for us to have a short meeting, one of our meetings is the town manager for Rumford. Because they've done some interesting things down there to deal with, because they've got a major employer that impacts them every time that they wag their tail.
Hmm.
Affects them, and they've got the hospital and a couple of things. It was very interesting how he talked about and dealt with it, because they're dealing with the similar issues that we are, that we have some core citizens that have been here a long period of time that are really sick of tourism and sick of talking about tourism and that part. And they understand it's part of the economy, but they're frustrated.
Yeah.
I mean, we
They
said, we
just-
saw it with
Quite allegedly, but-
yeah, but he had some interesting strategies on it, because what he did is he went back and outlined and showed it from the tax base.
Well,
And
that's what we were just talking about.
Right.
We were talking about the sales tax revenue increases when Saddleback reopened versus what it was prior to
$6
that.
million in revenue.
My point basically is the economic multipliers around that are huge.
Right.
And, when people start complaining about too many visitors, I always just refer back to 100 years ago and say, we ain't even close to what this place was once.
Exactly.
So it's the generation that's dying off now that may or may not be around for the next 10 years, and, as we look forward.
But if
we
you
have
go-
to find a way to sort of, I say, contemporize the past and keep Rangeley what Rangeley is, but in a growing kind of a world.
And it has to be livable for the people that are newly entering adulthood, so you can have the same multi-generational enjoyment, and they can actually afford to live here.
But
You
also-
just have a type of work situation that, will generate a real income.
But don't forget those same curmudgeon people. The reason I want to address some of this is those same curmudgeon people make up probably 75% of our voting electorate that will walk into the ballot box when we put this on the table.
Yeah.
So it just needs to be spun
Yeah.
in the correct way
Right.
to understand. Just like,
100%.
yeah, just like, when you look at the wording and those stuff, we go to that later, is, don't list tourism always up front in there. It could be one of the things. on the
Well,
list.
Chris, the
That's
thing about it is too, I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
My take on it is that there's two paths here. There's the doing what we think is right for the next 10 years and then selling it properly to the people that may be resistant.
Right.
And I think the way you do that is using hard economic data, unassailable data, not conjecture or anecdotal, but hard data that says this. And then you communicated it cleanly, which, involves, since we've talked about this, creating like one-page kind of things that can hit the high notes that people will understand. And, and have the community meetings,
But those community meetings, a lot of those people who show up, they make their narrative on the other piece. So the performance piece that we're gonna put out, we can talk about the implementation strategy
Right.
later, but the simple fact is that as we're presenting this economy stuff, and I think we need to present it in the lens that tourism is one of the parts of that there. It's a fact that can make life easy or hard in this town, 100%. But we also need to kind of also outline in a way that people understand that tourism has a positive impact on tax base, which has a positive impact on your tax bill. And I think that's how you sell it, so. to
Yeah,
speak.
right. I mean, again, good point, and I would agree exactly to do that. Today, it's hard to get into the details like
Yeah,
that.
we don't
But I'm
need
sort
to
of
today,
talking
right.
from like a 25,000-foot level and saying,
Yeah.
like, you make those kind of cases, and you make it clear and unassailable. And then people could say, well, I just think, well, okay, well, that's your problem.
Well,
Yeah,
the quality of
that's a
life for a resident of Rangeley would be impacted in a negative way if there was no tourism economy, because how many restaurants would you have if you had just had 1,200 people here?
Right.
Well, I used to make that argument for
You know, how
I
many,
ran the Poland downtown district for 3 years, did 3 Old Port festivals.
Right.
And we used to make that same point, is what city of 68,000 in the country has 178
I know.
restaurants?
Right.
Not anymore.
No, it's not,
Yeah.
it's more than how many people that show up there every year. So, the quality of life is kind of a funny thing here, you wanna maintain this.
So people don't make those connections, and I think that's what we can do on the sale part of that.
I think you're-
So
we're
let's
agreed.
talk about, let's just jump in, we're in economy, let's
Yeah,
just
let's
jump
just
into
do
the economy.
I think we talked about, to me, the biggest notes I had in that, when I looked at that over, is I think the lead story is the job creation and job impact that is driven by certain industries. Because I think that to me is what affects us positively and negatively. With
Yeah, to
Saddleback open, the job, that gave a lot more jobs that didn't exist, that were there, those type of things, that I think we focus. The economy is driven by that. It's not only, it's a twofold thing. It's not only the people that come in to spend, but the people that serve the people that come in to spend. They're tied at the hip.
Employment levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to admit, I didn't really study the economic section as much because I was writing this other stuff, but we have data from AvCog that talks about employment.
yes,
in the-
Yes,
in the various
But it's
industries.
weird.
But it's odd because it doesn't really, deals with a region, right? It doesn't deal with. specific-
Here,
Right.
you've got it right in here,
Yeah.
you've got the
It's
economy.
county driven, which I think it's a big misnomer.
No,
but
I know,
that's,
but
we
we
got
have to
rid of
find-
a lot of the county stuff.
Right.
We did get rid of a lot of
Thank you.
county stuff
Okay.
because it's.
I noticed that, and I appreciate
I
it.
I also know from my past work in hospitality Maine that sales tax revenue from the Maine Revenue Service also has to break down
Mm.
by towns, it wants to be broader kind of areas. And, you know, we struggle with writing this too, I'm talking about the region and Rangeley Town. And it's really hard.
That's the
and-
struggle for Rangeley in the
It's
next
hard,
20 years.
but,
That's
um,
the big elephant in the
Well, and that's the
room.
biggest problem. I mean, I just saw, I got an update, Sandy River and Saddleback were talking about things. One, Sandy River voted not to go forward to look at doing an LUPC alternative there. They also looked at not working on any kind of TIF structure for Saddleback with expansion there that adds to their tax base, and their tax base is 9 times bigger. It was a $20 million tax base before the Berries bought it, and then it was 170 million by the time our kids bought it.
Chris,
So. it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Chris, how about, we've got a draft here
Yeah,
of the economy section. There are some things that I want to talk about. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to make some edits to this.
Yeah.
To this economy section. I can send you the one, Wendy's been through it, Steve's been through it. And if you could go through it and just change the language that you want to change, I mean, I think.
well, I don't feel that it should be just me though. I mean, I think everyone said the ayes are. I just want to, my couple of notes that I want to give you with it. I think there's good pieces here and everyone's done a great job of what's there, but I think to me, it's simple semantic things that I don't want to get all into
So
today, like.
what else?
Like I would switch the names of all the industry, I just list them alphabetically, so that way tourism's not the lead story. Just so that, not that it affects, and then I also think that we need to talk clearly the causal link of when Saddleback's running and when these things are happening, that there's more job creation. And there's more job sustainability.
And
because-
Well, it's the impact on local
Exactly.
businesses.
It's trickle down, it's not
Yes.
direct jobs in Saddleback, it's
Tertiary,
Right,
meaning
it's like-
restaurants and
yeah.
hotels.
And the way that the new Saddleback model has gone is, the old model we had is we did everything in-house. They don't.
Mhm.
They handed off the entire revenue stream of rentals. And, that's now more diverse. So Beth's business is quintupled because she's taking care of all that there and dealing with that there, and there's not 10 staff people up there. So it's what, I think that's what you mean by tertiary.
Tertiary,
Yeah, is that there's jobs created by a major business operating, and then there's additional jobs that's created by, okay, the guy who pumps all the septic tanks needs an extra guy on now because there's 50 more septic tanks that need to be done.
The term we use is the multiplier.
Right,
That's really what it is.
and I think that's kind of the lead part that, to me, that we have to talk about. And then I also think if you can get some notes and I can connect you with, what's his last name? I can't remember his last name. Anyways, he took over for Carolyn with Jeff, he comes up here, Jeff McCabe. He's now the head of the outdoor tourism part. They have a ton of economic data and they went over a lot of that at that meeting, the summit I went to. And it's a bigger outdoor tourism, and those pieces are a bigger industry than a lot of other major.
I gave that all
I
to you,
have-
right?
I have
that,
data.
yeah.
Yeah, outdoor recreation is the term, not outdoor tourism, but in fact, we used to not like to use the term tourism, we call it the visitor industry.
Yeah.
Visitation, to avoid that.
And I think we
I
should-
like.
I like that, Steve, and
Yeah.
I actually think that might not be a bad way to go here and get rid of, because no one's getting toured, they're visiting.
No, they're
Yes.
visitors.
I mean, the tourists that come into town are the bus tourists that come to
And
Rapid.
they're visiting in multiple ways, which
Right,
brings us to the surprise of the findings in terms of a new economic driver in this region is the building industry.
Yeah.
I mean, that is second now. That's a huge change from 2012.
Here's the
you know?
sales
yeah,
tax.
well, 2008.
Of course, yeah.
It's 1 month after I moved.
So, I just think.
I think visitor industry, if you want
I
to.
think we should change that. I like that.
I know, we used to like that, I used to use that all the
And
time.
after Saturday.
Is anybody opposed to that?
Say
What
what?
Steve just proposed,
Thanks.
to change it to, instead of using tourism, we use visitor.
It's all throughout here. I love, it's all, the
Yeah.
edits have already been made.
Oh, I
think
like it.
it's
Steve
fabulous.
already recommended that, so I
Yeah,
need to
so I think
change.
you should do that.
So even like here, like there's still
I
some of the
think that's-
initial paragraph that say tourism, switch that to them. Winter visitor tourism, or what are we gonna use for now?
Well, to get back to your point though about the outdoor recreation economy, and what McCabe and Carolyn will add, and what they're doing at the state level, that's one of the strategic plans of the state.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it would hurt to dovetail it in.
I do
Yeah.
have that data.
I mean,
that
numbers
from-
talk.
From that,
Yeah.
that,
I do.
conference, as the reports from them on doing that, and, I think that, that's the other way to kind of address the next 10 years and mitigate people's concerns. That's a strategic element of Maine.
Right.
You know, Maine is the fifth, there's a fifth highest state in the union where outdoor recreation is a percentage of GDP.
Right.
Right,
Hawaii, Alaska, Florida,
Montana.
Montana, Maine.
right.
And so, you know, this is for the state,
So
so actually it's probably 80%, but
Right.
for the state, it's,
And I think,
big number.
I think it's important that we talk about, too, when we get into the economy and the tax structures, and we talk about that second homes and visitors to the area, the casual Rangeley residents, makes up a lion's share of the economy. I sit down with some of these folks that are very curmudgeon about it and explain to them often that I said, your tax bill's a fraction of what it would be
Right.
if it was there, and they don't necessarily understand that, so I think it's an important part for it to educate on. And I agree that I think we need to pull some of that outdoor recreation data into this economy part, because it is driving this.
You know, another thing, you made me laugh when you said this, because it's another, I used to quote it a lot in my old job, absolutely, like talking points, I used to say things like, you know, visitors are excellent, because they come, they spend money.
And they go, wow.
Yeah, they don't want kids in the school. they
But if
come,
it's-
they don't
if it's a
involve
dovetail-
services.
You know, and everyone gets wound up about the short-term rental use, but in reality, if we can tell the story better, people will understand that that's not a bad thing. People come into town, they spend the money, guess what? You gotta clean up after them. You gotta reset to the next person. It creates work.
It does.
And it impacts some neighborhoods.
Right,
You know?
it does, I think if there was data, rather than people saying there should be short-term rentals, I think if there was data where if they are specifically located, maybe there's more short-term rental density in one part of Rangeley than another.
Even our little, right, even our little street I live on, there's a couple of them there, and it's not a negative impact. It's
Yeah,
fine.
that's,
That's-
so,
So I think what you're talking about is great. I just asked Joe if he could look into the assessing data to see if there would be a way to pull out second homes, vacation homes, something to see if we could get a percent. I mean, we know that there's a lot of vacant homes, we know that, but if we could get a percent of the total assessed value.
There's an easy way to do that. Because I did it once already myself.
All right,
You take an Excel spreadsheet, you load the entire, go get the commitment book into an Excel spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And then you run, you take. Yeah, you
Is
take
there
the
a
whole
column?
tax circuit there, and then you take the voting stuff, which is already in the
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheet, you run a pivot table against the two, and out spits out your percentage ownership.
okay.
But it's not gonna be 100% accurate.
Right.
But pretty
But
much
it's
any,
used
you
the word
basically
local
say,
or approximate.
yeah, well, that's the thing, it's basically you scrub how many
Yeah,
get
no,
their
that
mail.
makes sense.
The Rangeley resident gets their mail locally versus how many of the bills go out, and I think that'll give you also as well. I came out with, I was like, I did it on the water district side too, and it was like, I did a lot of this analysis before, it was like 89-90%. This is, I did this when we did
Yeah, I
the,
heard 88%.
yeah, I think that's the number I need. Somewhere around
Okay,
there.
so-
Because, well, I did this when we did the school, because when I was trying to get the school budget through, the $5 million improvement we need to do, we had to borrow the money, because we can't get state funding, because we're an island school. And, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna go, but,
back to the.
the bottom thing of the economy though, is that I ran those numbers, and then when I went out to pitch the curmudgeon taxpayer, I could say, guess what, guys? This is really only costing the Rangeley residents $500,000. Because 90% of it's getting paid for by your second homeowners that aren't even here, that don't have kids in school.
I really like this whole notion of tying the economy to the tax base because, you know, because that's what it is. And that I think that we can play around with it and get some numbers of commercial and second homes and because it's huge. And so let us work on our end
Okay.
and see what we can get on that.
And I'm
What I
glad
wanna
to help,
do-
once you can pull the core data, I can help you do the analysis.
Is I wanna get this economy section out of track changes, cause I have to say this every time, it drives me crazy,
Yeah.
because I can't see the forest through the trees with it, and start and start making those, talk about the tax base, talk about Saddleback, link it to the increase because it's huge between 2019.
Well, I don't think all the credit, you said be careful, I don't think all the credit goes there, and I know a lot of taxpayers.
No, it doesn't, but
It's a
it's the
fact.
multiplier effect.
It is a multiplier.
And do something on the
And the
multiplier effect.
fiber and the folks that are able to move up here and work remotely. And
And COVID too,
And COVID.
2020, you know.
It was a trifecta, COVID, fiber, and the mountain was the trifecta that drove people up there. So I think, I wouldn't give too much credit to one or the other.
No, I
because
get
think-
it, I get it.
But I think it is important we mention Saddleback's impact in here, because this will help them if they go for more federal and state money, that it's referenced in here that it is.
Yeah.
So, and
then we have-
their whole business plan is driven by federal and state funding.
Yeah, and
So-
Steve's been doing a lot with outdoor recreation, and we'll pull outdoor recreation into it, and we'll pull ag and forestry into it,
So
because.
is that that's where I need to get like my head straight in this plan, the next iteration of it. So what are we looking at as chapters? Are we thinking of like mega chapters, like economy, and then as sub chapters, pieces that play into it
Yeah.
in that? Okay,
I think the lead story is the economy. I don't know.
I agree with that.
It's the economy.
Yeah, I
It's the local
mean, and I don't have a problem with, we do the history. If we
Yeah.
do Steve's history, if we kick it off, we get the history chapters near the front, so people read that, it frames the window.
Yeah.
And then the economy's the
So
lead
the
story.
demographics, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll do
we got
that.
that.
The economy's the lead story, and then everything else there. If we don't think I think it's, we just went through, regardless of your political affiliations, we just went through, and the electorate has spoke very clearly that the economy is a big issue.
It is
And
absolutely.
I think
yeah.
that was the driving force that we dealt in the national election. It's the biggest thing that gets talked about is people with tax and tax base. So to me, weaving the tax base in, the job creation, the tertiary jobs, the multipliers, the outdoor recreation piece, the outdoor economy piece on the state guidelines, those pieces, weave all this into that economic chapter, and I think we've got to win.
And I think, I'm saying, okay, so I think that's great. I think, I'm just gonna jump here a little bit, but when it comes to, I mean, agriculture was a big part of the economy. The 2012 plan says we don't have it, but Wendy and I did a little digging and we did it. We had a great conversation with a few of the farmers.
They're not your average farmers. These people are so intelligent.
Yeah,
And so
And
committed to Doris and
Toby and
Toby
Ian
Ian
and,
from Blueberry Farm.
Yeah.
He's not in Rangeley, but.
I mean, we opened it up to everyone, those who.
Yeah,
wants it.
and they're doing some cool stuff, and I mean,
They are.
there's a lot of, and, you might
So-
not consider it, but Brian and Priscilla,
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you talked to them, but they are.
So I've
farmers
talked to
too.
Brian in the past,
Yeah.
because he's been involved with town leadership and he's a great resource for information.
We can't force them to talk, but those
Yeah.
that were willing to talk, so let me just give you the snapshot of what they said.
Walk around.
Is that they said, agriculture is, always right on the line, and so don't overregulate us.
Right.
So what we have in that chapter about agriculture is allow a number of things, like hoop houses and greenhouses to extend the season, housing on their property, if they need to bring in seasonal workers,
The other one that needs to be in there, which I don't know if Toby mentioned, is allowing, the state has a lot of restrictions on butchering. So like
I didn't do butchering.
processing and that, like, they do chickens and those type of things. But there's so much restrictions on how they can get those processed and do those things. It goes against what the whole right to food thing was done a few years ago. There's a problem
ran
with
into
state
that too.
regulation, so I think it's important if we can weave into the comp plan in the ag section, said that we are supportive of locally raised and locally farmed, those type of things, so that way, if the state loosens their guidelines, that he could actually harvest and prepare his chickens on site with a proper facility that obviously gets reviewed by Greg or somebody like a commercial kitchen, because that is what exponentially changes their costs of providing you know, the chicken per pound, because they have to go down to a special place
Yeah.
to get it done and those type of things.
And meat fabrication too, meaning like, butchering a pig or a cow, I mean, you can't do that on your farm right now.
You can't,
Yeah.
Unless you're really regulated and you have a special.
So I'm just saying,
Or a-
what I'd like to
But
see
leave
is,
it open.
I'd like us to see that if the state guidelines loosen on that and allow them to do that, that we don't have anything on the town level that restricts them from being able
So,
to go.
so that's exactly what they're saying, is like, now, I think that there needs to be something, and I'm talking small scale, everything we have is small scale. We don't have, backyard farms with the, from Madison doing all the tomatoes and the,
Right,
and if that were the case, then that would be different. But I don't think.
well, it'll never happen, because the only reason it happened there, because I worked on that project before they went in there, and they have their electric costs, they have their own electric company.
Yeah,
out there.
so I don't
They-
think we're gonna see that, but I think
No.
that somehow, we write stuff to just give them by right the ability to do a number of things to grow and expand.
And to support their regenerative farming techniques, because that was the one thing that Doris talked about, and she's a really bright woman, she was a professor at Bowdoin,
Yeah, still is.
Yeah,
Still is.
she,
It's great.
That's like, you grow hydroponic tomatoes, but you also have salmon swimming in the water.
Yeah,
So they fertilize the plants and then
Right.
you can harvest the salmon, and you wouldn't wanna you'd wanna keep it as open as possible, so when they come up with a new widget,
Yeah.
they don't hit a wall.
We do not want to hamper the development.
So obviously what we have in place for Rangeley, code regarding farming is working. Yes, they're there.
yes, and we wanna make
You
sure
wanna
that
help
it continues to work. That we don't,
Right.
and so maybe what we do to make it easier for Breck is that if somebody comes in and they wanna do a greenhouse, that Breck isn't saying, ooh, I don't know if you can do a greenhouse, but open it up, expand it to, just expand the definitions so that they can continue to grow and do what they need
You
to
have
do
to
to
address
process.
the challenging growth zone that we're in. I mean, Rangeley is a
It's a
unique.
very
ecosystem.
challenging.
Well, greenhouses
So-
are anyways, they're constitutionally temporary structures.
So,
They don't
okay,
require a
so
permit.
that's what we have for agriculture. So for forestry, if you haven't read it yet, which I wouldn't be surprised, because I just sent it to you, because I'm still waiting for some stuff from the Forest Service, and, but they have promised me that they'll get it, and so there's changes in forestry
Right.
products too, and, we have these mass timbers, and I was reading this study that a Maine consulting company does on the forest industry. And, there's some things, these timbers that are now being used instead of concrete and instead of steel. And they are very close to the log, so it's not like it has to be chipped and then dipped in something and then put back together again, but it's very close to the log. So it seems like that kind of manufacturing up here could be really good. And I talked to Nathan Kay at, Seven Islands, thank you. And he said that they would love to be able to add value to products up here. Because, all those logging trucks going down in the logs and then, that it would just be more efficient to ship it in different ways.
So process it here.
So
And you're talking about sawmills and,
Sawmills, chipping.
and you guys know where the old sawmill is, right?
No, but,
Right next to town on Lake,
Town Lake.
where that big house now sits, that whole south here, that was.
I mean, it's using waste products to make pellets.
Right.
Have a local pellet producer. So all of those things, that's in the forestry section.
Right.
Is opening that up and allowing that to be in the forestry district, the woodland district, which is huge, which has also the most residential development, which is why I like that buffering, because that stuff is loud, it's got trucks, and there's a lot of stuff happening in
But
there.
I think we can address that in the ordinance, in any kind of facility
Yeah,
has.
The transition zones, it's like the colas, in in Rome. I mean, it's just like there's a city and then there's this.
Yeah, and
So those are the
Exactly.
cliff notes, those are the cliff notes for ag and forestry.
So I also think we have to be realistic on that stuff, because I think part of the challenge is that logging trucks don't mind driving 75 or 100 miles to go do stuff, but manufacturing, we're 75 minutes from a major highway. So I mean, that's part of our challenge there. I mean, that's why, Farmington and Wilton are 30 minutes from that, and they can't fill their industrial.
And so, yeah, it may never happen.
Right, but I think we should leave the door open.
But, right, that's all we're doing here is leaving the door open.
But I also think that, how great would it be though, that there's actually, like right now, we've got a house, Brett and I were just talking about, but built up on a hilltop that's gonna have all these really nice timbers. They gotta come from a guy down in Mercer,
Right.
and he told us 4 weeks, and it's week 7. We still don't have them,
Yeah.
I'm pulling my hair out, and,
And they probably come from here and go down there and then come.
yeah,
back.
the logs probably come right out of here, so
Right.
how great would it be that we could, and that's where I think if we can highlight some of these things in these chapters and say, these are the things that would be good, it would also give some teeth to, as the TIF district and the TIF money start to come in, that we can say, look, these are some of the things we highlight, we want to set aside. So somebody says, look, I'd like to build a mill here. Great, well, we've got $100,000 of TIF money that we can help use you to get you up and running, because we feel it's an important link that fits everything all together.
Exactly.
So that, it raises like a microcosm to the state of Maine, which has been doing for generations, taking our natural resources, shipping them away.
Yeah.
To be processed and created.
Yeah, versus here, we're talking constantly about the building boom.
So.
How great would it be that we could
Well,
actually
and
have it
I
produced
think we
right
could
here?
get some climate dollars federally for that too, because
Right.
if you think about the,
You're
to extrapolate out in, dollars over time and the energy use, I mean, it would just make sense to process here. It could benefit the people that live here, when they're building new homes.
These are fantastic, we haven't had them.
Oh my gosh, they are so
Yeah.
good.
Are these
Wendy,
yours?
great.
Wendy? Oh,
Wendy
yeah.
made them.
They already had.
My husband made me eggs Benedict this
It's
morning.
not gonna hurt you.
Wow.
You want to know one of yours?
All right.
Cindy?
So, thank you, I'll have some.
Okay, so here's what I wanna do. Oh, all right, so that's all the economy with the code, but then you have the problem of there's no place for people to live, there's not enough childcare, there's not enough workers.
We're coming.
Breaking ground Monday.
It's a beautiful thing. I had a great conversation with, Georgia Campbell
Okay, good.
yesterday about what's going on up there and, how that's all linked together. It's beautiful. They're doing a lot of great training in the forestry section. I also put in a little piece on what just in case it sparks something in someone if they read it. There's a great training program. It's free. It's like a 20-week course that someone can go to learn how to use all the equipment.
Our bank,
And they start
our
with,
bank sponsors that.
and they start with a job that can be, they can start on the ground at like $60,000-$70,000. So, great way for, so. Thank you. So those are the things that we need to deal with.
Can I,
Rick had a
maybe,
question.
I know this is good, Rick's gonna say something, sorry.
I don't want to open an old topic, but it goes, as I'm listening to, how do we bring industry and how do we bring this? None of that's gonna happen unless we have housing for, affordable housing for people. And the issue that we have over here is that the workforce housing project isn't gonna start till 26 because of federal funding and the delays in federal funding. But the reality is putting that in used a lot of creative math to get that, because it's half village, half residential. That's kind of a cluster, ultimately it's kind of a cluster area. But we need areas like that we can tap into for workforce housing type, just affordable workforce housing. Without that, we don't have the workforce and no one's gonna come here to put in new businesses and that kind of thing.
What if you created an ordinance that, spoke to just that and create like a affordable housing overlay district that you could lap
Yes.
over?
Thank you.
I think that's a great, we did the.
And
Oh,
it's
you're
not
familiar with that,
spot
Portland,
zoning,
there's a couple of
because it
rights.
could be, yeah,
Exactly.
Can I,
So,
just go, to follow up on that point and housing, to go up one step of the ladder, you know, if we were gonna try to condense this down into sort of 4 or 5 super chapters, like let's call them, you know.
That sounds
We know,
good.
we know the economy is one of those things, we talked about it. As Chris said, we could lead with history because it kind of gives the background of the whole place to get to here. But I was thinking, when we were talking about housing and childcare and stuff like that, might one of those sections almost be about people?
Yes, that's what I was thinking
So,
too,
which
yeah.
is.
That's not a bad idea, because then we can cover the medical.
Yeah, right,
Bingo, that's
and,
exactly
and,
like it.
and quality of life, which
Housing,
is
workforce,
important.
childcare, healthcare.
Why don't we do that? Why
That's
don't
it.
we make that super chapter that covers all 4 of those?
perfect.
Yeah.
Quality of life, people, affordable housing.
Because then you could put the
Yeah.
arts and quality of life, you could put, I mean, even outdoor recreation, really, or healthy lifestyles, that type of thing.
Well, I was thinking there was another chapter, and whether outdoor recreation could fall, not with the people,
Could
but
be everywhere.
the outdoor recreation piece that I've been dealing with is really about the assets, as opposed to the, and
Utilization.
what future assets. could
But
be.
why would we do that almost like in the comp plan report? Why wouldn't we do a section that's assets, and why don't we do a section that's liability?
Right, it could, well,
Well, like a SWOT analysis?
before you go. into
Yeah, well, I think it's important.
Well, before you sort of go to that direction, I was thinking, you know, in terms of outdoor resources, outdoor recreation also connects to, you know, natural resource quality and stuff like that, and lumping that together. And it, what else? Possibly the zoning aspects that we wanna put in. Those are all about the physical assets of the place kind of in a way.
Right.
And then you've got the economic aspect, which is gonna deal with the industries, the metrics, and population can fall in there too, I suppose. But also just the numbers from, say, outdoor recreation, the financial aspects of the community. So, you know, if it's economy, if it's physical assets, if it's people, you know, and history, I mean, basically, you got those 4 categories that are kind of super categories that things could fall beneath.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that's an important part. Cause
Who
I
knows, we could call it like Rangeley Life or living in Rangeley
Yeah.
or.
Yeah.
Well, there's also the businesses, I guess, which would be under the economy, but, you know, we was talking about farms, which is a smaller piece of the overall number, but it's there. When you talk about construction, going up the ladder, usually too, you talk about forestry.
Right.
These are sort of like the visitation business.
Well, yeah, and I think, and that's important, like, for instance, up on Grandview, where we just did a spec house, right next to that is, Gary Lance's old house, and it was bought by a forestry company, and their guys live there.
Yeah.
All week, they all live there together in one house, and that's kind of become like
Brings
the
us
new
to
model.
the inventory of housing that's allowable, meaning boarding houses.
Right,
The country club.
Right.
yeah,
I mean, this
that's a disaster.
yellow house right down here on the corner.
Oh my gosh.
I just want the town to buy it and use Main State Housing. They now have a program for rehab to convert old buildings into housing, into units and rehab the whole thing or start from scratch or something.
Are you talking about the building?
The one that keeps going up in the price.
Is that right on the corner?
It's right on the corner,
Yeah,
it's right here,
Yeah, or the blue market or something.
What's some oddball?
It's antique,
Building?
yes, the
Oh, that
original
one?
antique building. Yeah, the antique one right here on the
Right at
corner.
the corner.
Oh,
Stephanie Chauvel sold it.
yeah, they bought it, they were gonna use it for housing for
Yeah,
their
they
guys
were.
when they're gonna build their big house for them, and then they
Yeah.
haven't done anything.
They haven't done anything, I don't know.
It's a tough space.
It is
because
a tough space.
Yeah, because the thing about housing that's so tough in this economy is that, I talked to, who's the chair of the planning board? Yeah, I talked to him about it and I was like, how the heck are we gonna do affordable housing? He said, you're not. He said, I can build an affordable house, but do I sell it for 350,000? But I've got somebody who's gonna pay me 700.
Yeah.
So the only way it's gonna happen is if there is a nonprofit at the town So the government, it's a place,
Yeah,
The
a couple of
only
us
way
looked
I've
at
ever
setting up
seen
a-
it a housing authority or a
No, a couple of them.
nonprofit. A nonprofit, I think, is the way that
Right.
that the Maine State Housing Authority is.
We had that discussion over at, over in, Eustis.
I did talk to the folks, Western Maine Mountain Housing, I think.
Yeah, they're,
They would love to have Rangeley be
Expand
part of
over
that.
Rangeley.
yeah, they're struggling. That's Paul Peckham's guy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and
He's
so
got touch.
You think I'm tenacious and tough?
Oh,
Paul
Paul
puts me to shame.
the lawyer from Portland.
Yeah.
I know.
I was on a cheat.
So, so, I mean, I think to do that without government subsidy, it's not gonna
No, it's
happen.
never gonna happen.
All right,
Well, the numbers aren't there.
So I'm gonna harp on short-term rentals and the availability right now. That the affordable housing market is the village.
Mhm.
And if we determine the density of short-term rentals in the village. And, I mean, that would be, it's mentioned in one of these chapters that
What do you mean density, what do you mean, oh, like have a cap?
have a cap,
Okay.
by means of attrition, as a home.
Yeah, like, if, like those who
That-
already
that's
have it
the
can
historic-
continue, but when they go to sell, it won't.
It won't be an option.
That's hard though, because that becomes quote unquote a taking.
But it's not like it's been a long-standing practice,
But,
The
can you
village.
explain, because I'm not quite
Okay,
with you
so,
yet.
so we already have what's considered affordable housing, and that's the Rangeley Village.
Okay, all right.
But it's not anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
no.
Because of the lack of
No,
availability.
but even that, I mean, I bought my house in town on High Street for $103,000.
And you get 700 now.
All day long.
Right.
I mean, my
all-
realtor friends, even I have a
It's a supply matter, I'm just
Yeah.
saying,
But-
historically, there exists
right.
a,
But what's-
what is attainable or affordable in Rangeley as well as, you don't find that same number of short-term rentals apparently in the Quasit Village.
Right, but the problem that I think.
Because of the.
But how, so how does the short-term rental, how is?
Well, one is being charged-
What is,
I
So
know
what-
what you're saying.
Yeah, so what has happened is that former primary residences have been purchased by out-of-staters. I've done a number of closings and are now sitting empty,
Okay.
except when they're rented short-term, which takes them out of the market, which decreases supply, increases the price.
Do those people use it on their own too?
It's
Because that's the risk I see.
Right,
It's not that.
but this,
The houses I go by, because I live up, I go through town 7 times a day, they're often not owner occupied. I think it's a great point, it's a great question, but again, I'm just gonna get back to what already exists.
Yeah, we used to argue, I mean, I've argued both sides of this issue in my
Yeah.
previous job, trust me.
Yeah,
Every time.
I can argue either
But
way.
I couldn't easily do that, but we used to talk about, people buying houses simply to rent them.
Yes.
A short-term rental, not
Yes.
people that have long-term rental, that's different story.
But what's,
But we used to refer to them as unlicensed hotels.
yes.
Yeah.
But the problem you have here in Rangeley that I've observed now in the 3 years I've lived here is that many people do that just so they can afford to have a place to come up to when they want to come.
Correct.
And that's one thing that's a slippery slope.
It is,
Yeah.
but I'm
You
just
know?
saying, this is a recent factor that has
But you're
worked its
talking-
way into
So
Rangeley
are
within the
you-
last 3 or 4 years.
Are you is it a phenomenon that we live with, or is it a phenomenon?
Well,
that we
I'd like
try
to
do
speak to
something?
that. I'd like to speak, because what's happened is, we had the triumvirate, the 3 major issues that happened that came to converge at once.
Yeah,
COVID, fiber, Saddleback reopening.
Mhm.
All 3 of those happened at once. If you'd walked up here on December 2019 and needed to rent a place to live,
you'd be fine.
you'd have found. it. January 2020, Saddleback sold,
Yeah.
then they opened. And then we had the COVID, all that stuff. Then things, all of a sudden, the market restricted. I watch this thing like a hawk. I still do. And if you get out there and you're watching Facebook and you're watching the things going, that has softened. Also, what's happened is all these people, they're using this, those that are looking, that are the buyers that want to rent. That maybe use it some, but mostly looking for the rental income as an investment property, they're using this thing called AirDNA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
So-
a hack.
And if you go and look at that and you do the math through the court thing, they're way off. They're way off on their analysis. Rangeley's typically ran at a 29% occupancy rate for the past 15 years.
I've
It's
had
been
some
higher than
DNA data.
But that AirDNA numbers, I've looked at it several times. I got fraternity brothers who've been trying to do the same thing. They live in Texas, they wanna buy a thing for $1 million and see if they can rent it enough, and then they're gonna use it for a week or two. Those type of things. And those numbers have been way off on everything that I have seen. And so what's going on now is reality starting to set in. We had a shitty winter last year, which gave limited snowmobiling. Snowmobilers are some of the best short-term renters. And then we had a strong summer, but if you weren't on the water, all of those that were up on the hill there sat. So I think what's gonna happen is that we're starting to see stuff come back on, and if there's just any kind of quiver in the economy, then I think some of this stuff's gonna open. The core issue that's happened in the real estate cycle that we are not able to solve is when this normally happens in the real estate cycle, it's called expansion and overexpansion. It's called the building happens. But when I started building up here in 2008 at Saddleback, it was $150 a square foot to build. It's now $450 a square foot to build. So it doesn't work to get those products can't be produced, like what Lee says, they can't be produced.
So that's where something like
That's where government
a
has to be.
housing LLC, a housing nonprofit, a housing
Right.
authority.
I think that's where
a
we should
housing-
lay into that, that a
And
housing
that's
authority
where
needs to be.
Lord found that there is money in the budget, that when those houses, they say, oh, this Airbnb thing didn't work, can go in and scoop them up.
But right now, I mean, you're gonna see, I don't know what the number's gonna be, but the worst house on my street, I'm guaranteed sold for high ones or low twos, and that thing is a friggin' tear down. I walked through it.
Is this,
Paula's house.
yeah, I close on that next week.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's high one, low two. I'll wait to see in the transfer tax.
Oh, I know what house you're talking about.
Can I just jump in with something on this?
That's
Because,
a perfect one for you.
I would just say that the thing about short-term rentals and the thing that would mitigate short-term rentals are hotels.
Right,
And, you know, if we're gonna continue to grow this economy, we don't have, I mean, my good friend, you know, I've got friends in the hotel business here too, that don't wanna hurt their business, which I would. But what would reduce the amount of short-term rentals would be hotels, like especially downtown here.
we had a flag, it was all.
Well, we could, but we don't wanna have that apparently in this town, you
We
know.
had one before.
But I would say that,
Have a what?
the flag hotels.
A flag hotel is the
Like
national.
country.
Yeah.
Oh.
There was a Sheraton, the big Rangeley
Yeah,
hotel was a
yeah.
Sheraton. in the
That was a
50s.
long time
We're
ago,
good
yeah.
for now.
But now that, you know, Sheraton or Hilton have about 27 brands.
I know.
The Hilton banner. But my point was more around, supporting the industry and, you know, getting less day trippers and more people that overnight and spend money here. You need somewhere to stay. So if we don't have hotels, it becomes a rental of some sort.
Well, that's the whole thing,
That's one of the-
it's like, people don't want the short-term rentals because of some of the challenges
And
there.
they don't want a hotel.
But a short-term renter goes out to dinner, goes to a couple other
Yeah,
things.
no,
They do all, they spend time here, they
Right.
spend money in the shop.
So
So that's the balance.
this all came out of the whole piece with housing,
Village.
okay?
Yeah.
And the affordable housing exists. It's just not,
Well,
We don't have attainable housing.
that's true.
So is the solution, so now if we could jump into solutions or, and we've got market issues, we've got a lot of things, it all comes down to money. So are you talking about, but you don't wanna talk about regulating short-term rentals?
I think whatever happens with land use planning around us with the four plantations, we probably ought to talk about being more congruent.
Well, LUPC already has established policy for
Yeah,
short-term,
and
and it's way
it's
more
not-
restrictive.
It's
No,
it's
it
not
isn't.
established
No,
yet.
it's not.
It's
not
not
without
established.
walls down.
Yeah,
It's
it's just.
super light touch.
It's a registration and it's make sure you don't light the place on fire and you can flush the toilets, you know?
But I mean, that's even more restrictive. that's about what we were looking at with the ordinance. It
Yeah,
wasn't
it
much
wasn't.
more than that.
No, just,
So I'm just saying, if we follow that state guideline, we still accomplish the pieces.
So are we adding consider adopting the LUPC standards for long-term rentals, short-term rentals?
I don't know, I'd be careful about even saying that.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean,
I think the market's gonna correct it.
I tend to agree with you too, I think it's already peaked on.
But if the market corrects it, then who's gonna, I mean, you need to be able to step in
Right,
and do something to
But-
get that, so.
but I think what will naturally happen is we have natural business people here that buy properties, that provide apartment, those, the number one thing that came up, which I wasn't surprised about, people aren't looking for full houses. They wanna live in duplexes or triplexes or those type of things. And that's where I think if we want to do something, we could do some kind of a bonus or with the tip and say, if you're creating this and you're going to offer it at or below market, at a below market rate, these type of things, then we could offer an incentive to the private developers. It says, great, you can apply for tip funds of X amount per unit as long as you do it under these restrictions. But that's where you need a housing authority and those type of things in order to congruent that.
Who
part.
can do that, who can
And
make sure.
I think the one
Yeah.
part that I'd like you to be careful of in any of the housing thing is I think we need to stay away from is affordable.
Affordable.
Because what people automatically go to with affordable is section 8, which is interesting because this is why I want the town manager broker guy to come up here and talk about it. People get all this stigma about section 8. Well, guess what? In order to get section 8, the building has to be safe. It has to have all of these things that are done to it, and it's a guaranteed rental income from the thing. So you actually, the problem is that he has in Rumford are the slumlords that are taking cash from drug dealers and all the other people down there in Rumford. We don't have that issue,
Yeah.
but the problem is, they're not supporting. The people look at the stigma around section 8, but in reality, section 8 is a way to allow some people to be able to get some housing that are workforce and make sure that the building is safe. So I think people automatically go, when you think of affordable, you think people from away coming in here that are just getting a section 8 check and they're just gonna be a drag on the resources of the town.
Shouldn't the term be workforce housing?
Yeah,
Well,
so-
Workforce, or I like attainable. I love the word attainable.
So somehow you need to define this, and on page 6 of the current housing section, it talks about affordability and workforce housing, and I included some definitions, some state definitions of that. Because I know that the word, I know that there's a lot of stigma with the word, but on the other hand, consistency, there's value to consistency too. And, I like the word attainable, but it's not consistent with anything, with what anybody else does.
No, and that's fine. I mean, if we gotta use stuff that's consistent terms, I'm just saying, there's a huge stigma around the.
Kevin Breck's gonna.
They're always-
No,
You just
Through you,
gotta.
Chris.
take a breath, good.
So again, I think the model that we have started this past year, we don't call it, what do we call it, the Rangeley Workforce Housing Project, is a model. If this works, it's for people who live in Rangeley full-time, work in Rangeley full-time. It's federal and state funds. And you can only rent those for no less than 12 months a year. So their leases is run by an outside housing authority, and the lease is a 30-year commitment.
And what's the lease rates?
What's that?
What's the proposed lease rates?
So proposed lease rates for the duplexes is anywhere from $500 to $800 a month. And the house and single family homes, which are 2 bedrooms and a loft, are anywhere from $900 to $1,200 a
Is
month.
it
Okay,
based
we went down.
Percentage,
That's
percentage
fantastic.
So that's what they're talking about.
household income?
Yeah, it's based on
Yeah,
how
they have to
you
do
want
a
to
report
rate. So and you have to have, it's a median range
Yeah.
that you have to have. So it's not, I had a lot of discussions with people, oh, we don't want section 8 housing in here, and had to explain what it actually was.
That's
So
a
there is
NIMBY thing you're gonna hear everywhere.
Yes,
Yeah.
so we called it the Rangeley Workforce Housing Project.
I love it.
And then the word
Yeah.
project became, we don't want the projects in Rangeley.
Yeah.
So.
Because that ties two issues together, workforce and housing.
So if this
For us.
works well, then the developers of this want to do, they've got 2 other areas that they want to do.
Okay, got 'em all.
But we don't have, we do not have a model for townhouses or condos.
Mhm.
anything beyond a duplex is a headache for Carl and I, complete
So
headache.
that's really
Because
important.
Yeah.
Multifamily problem, multifamily housing, which is three units or more, is a headache.
Yeah, we need to simplify that
Yeah,
process.
we do.
Yeah.
So let's, as we, I mean, we're kind of, so
We're
I
gonna take
wanna
a 10
just,
minute.
I
5
wanna,
minute
I
break
wanna
and-
finish up economy, because we jumped right into housing, because how can you not? But I also wanna talk about in the economy, putting in some opportunities there to create tips so that you have some incentives, and maybe that new commercial district on, out by, Mingo Loop Road. I mean, maybe that's.
Midtown, we call it, yeah.
What do you call it?
Midtown.
Midtown, yeah, and,
It is.
It sounds good.
okay, I like that. All right. So we do, I mean, maybe that has a tip on it. Maybe that has a tip on it, and it is only for, it's something, and, it's very specific what the money can be used for, and to encourage stuff to happen there. So a tip policy is sometimes a good thing to have.
Can we, I mean, to me, I think those are the things to figure out, but I mean, to me, if you came to me and said, and I think you came to the average taxpayer and said, we got $1 million in tip money, what type of things do you think you go to? Everyone's gonna say affordable housing for the young people in this town. So I'm almost thinking, if there's a way to do like the overlay district somehow and say, this is overlay, this will allow you, build to
In the
title
village area.
lines in the village areas,
With,
will.
with
right.
public resources, water,
Right.
sewer.
And then, these type of things to encourage those type of projects, then I think it's there. And if we can create it in a way, like, you got the yellow house here. You've got, there's a few places around here that could be turned into apartment buildings.
And there's some special pots of funding available for that.
Right.
And they're already in the TIF district,
Mhm.
so.
Okay, so, yeah, so I just think that having that in the plan, saying that it's supportive of tips that do certain things. Now, credit enhancement agreements is where things get a little sticky,
Yeah,
where
right.
you're just giving money back.
And the general
But it-
public doesn't
but it-
understand.
Yeah.
But you have to explain to them that
But
the tax money wouldn't exist. This is what the tax money is now, $1,100
You're not losing.
versus you're still getting that plus more,
Right.
and that it's just there.
And you don't have to do 100%. You can
No,
do a
no.
small scale.
No,
It
you
is
don't.
just-
That's
Doesn't
all
have to be
part of the.
hard.
The other thing that I wanna talk about too, and I sort of can't believe I'm even bringing this up, but I think it could work here, is a transfer of development rights program, which is an old planning tool to preserve land out in the wilderness and to strip the development rights from it. It's like a conservation easement, it just doesn't, what it's doing is taking the development rights off it, so it can no longer be developed, it can be used, forestry, agriculture,
Very
whatever.
popular in Massachusetts in agriculture.
And, yeah,
Western
and use that to translate that into,
Density
density
in other
It
areas.
gives you density bonus, you can buy.
where the sewer is.
Yeah.
And you also have, if that is a thing that Rangeley wants to consider, you have to have the right terminology about what happens when you take it out of that. Because that is a nightmare. If someone, it's just like tree growth,
Yeah. It's gotta have a good, it's gotta have the
And
penalty.
an
it's
exit
gotta have the
policy.
penalty.
And
If someone's
it's-
gonna buy it, do that.
And it would be something, it would be a way to work with someone like the land trust.
The other,
To get
Right.
some money into their coffers,
they got it quite a bit.
They've got,
They're all right.
they're all-
Well, but, I mean, and they could also be a holder of them.
I guess the only concern that I have with that is if we do some of that stuff, that money gets, to me, we strip the development rights, they pay for the conservation easement, that goes right back in either the TIF bucket or the obtainable housing bucket, because I don't think it should go out
General
and
fund,
and
yeah.
that. Because they've got lands for Maine Future, they've got all those type of things, they've got people that donate to that all the time, every tree hugger that's out there that'll do that. There's plenty of opportunities for that cash, there's not enough cash to get some of these problems solved that we need.
But this would be a
solved.
localized program, is that what you?
Yeah, so I think that money should get put back
Yeah.
into things that we would, that to solve our bigger issues.
Are you talking about the tips or
I'm
the?
talking about if you do a conservation, you still have transfer to development rights, you've gotta have, one, you gotta have either the transfer that they can be bought in and out.
Right, there's
Like-
gotta be a bank of that.
Yeah, like the Morton family owns a ton of woodland, they would still be able to harvest the wood and do everything there, but they gave up any development license there, they get a check for that. But where's the funding for that check gonna come from?
Oh, you don't get it until
No.
you're sold.
No,
It's like you wanna
Right.
sell your house, you don't get the money until you sell.
But then we
the
could
house.
go to somebody else who wants to do, like the guy in town here wants to do the old IGA and say, look, you can buy these transfer development rights.
And you
boom,
can
and then
get-
that money goes to the
You
Morton.
get 10 units instead of
Right,
right.
5 units or whatever.
yeah, and see, in Portland, they're doing the opposite, and they're doing all these penalties on, they have a huge penalties, like everyone's built now, these 9-unit condo complexes, because once you go to 10, there's like a $500,000 penalty. So it's just,
Well,
no, that's
incentive,
the other thing,
So-
what Wendy's talking about, which I think is important, is we have to play this out in our head. What's the workaround if people wanna do that on a number of different things?
So you wanna, I mean, I would say in terms of zoning, you have sending areas and receiving areas is what you have to do. And I would say that the sending areas is where the land's being preserved and that would be the woodland district. And the receiving area would be the
Village.
residential district,
Or
right?
Village.
But also, it could just be the village connected to public water and public sewer, because you can't get the density that's gonna make a project,
Right.
help bring the affordability down without having the water and sewer, because otherwise you're limited to 20,000 square feet no matter what.
Yeah, and I think what's also important too is to look at too, is that sometimes in municipality, and this is where Joe and China for sure wanna chime in, is that, we've got that lot on the corner of School Street where they're storing some stuff for the fire and police. We got the Davis's old house that had the oil tank float up in the water, and that's kind of a disaster zone there. That, I don't know if the town wants to keep that lot or not, but that's a perfect area where those two lots are, and to build something that's affordable and attainable. It's walkable to everywhere in town and all those type of things.
I don't think we
But-
own the adjacent lot.
You don't,
They pay their
but,
taxes.
yeah, I know, but it's not, it's owned by his children. He used to serve on the water sewer district years ago.
Yeah, but we don't own it now and.
I don't know, I heard the town was interested in buying.
I don't know if the owner's interested in selling.
Yeah, and I think that's it. They've been approached by other people.
Yeah. I
And
know.
they
I
are
was
not
wondering.
interested in selling at this point, but
Cause
anyway,
I thought it was a good spot to put, that would be a good spot.
but we digress.
Anyways,
Okay, so
So-
I'm just adding into housing that, identify properties for purchase by the town. Or land, or, for redevelopment, for redevelopment.
I don't see the town.
And then we've got the new state law that's come into play where if we have to pay the person the market value
of the property.
of the
that's
property that we
seized.
are seizing or retaining.
So
There's a
we-
whole other,
we
I
go
would,
for it.
We're not seizing anything.
well, it's the way that.
Well, I think if we wrote it, if we do it under, we encourage for the development of a housing
I
authority.
think
Housing authority
You
should go
mean
in.
purchase, and I know what you're talking about.
You're talking about, like,
That's a
take it by
foreclosure, and then,
Tax
the
acquired
town
property.
takes it.
Yeah.
And keeps it.
and then they say, oh, let's sell it, you don't get the proceeds, they go to the.
But even if we
original
keep
owner.
it,
They should.
even if we keep it after seizing it, we have to pay.
Yes,
Market
yes, but if.
No, we're talking about a
you-
free market exchange, buying, somebody bought this place
Like we did with the parking lot.
But.
with their
if-
401k tanks and they got their property arranged, they overpaid 200 grand for it.
But you bring up a very good point, and that's tax acquired property. Do you have a lot of tax acquired?
No.
property?
We stay away from.
They're usually very, very fortunate.
Yes,
People pay their taxes?
People find a way to pay their taxes.
Okay.
People do GoFundMe accounts.
It's great.
Okay, cause that is a way, and yes, anything beyond the taxes,
Yeah, it's a cost. It's
Yeah.
not- Yeah, anything didn't used to be,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it
Supreme
did,
Court took care of that.
I'm well aware of that, yeah.
So,
So good money
so
on that.
what else do we need for that
Okay.
part?
Okay, so I think for the economy, we kinda have it, I gotta
I just have,
rework it, oh, go ahead, yeah.
so I just don't understand the purpose of, the pages aren't
Are
numbered.
you in a?
They are numbered,
I am in
Cindy, they're right-
economy and
Cindy, look down here, they're,
4, thank you, on page
yeah, it's
4.
not right up front, yeah.
Above, so it's below the picture, the red lined area, I just don't understand the many recommendations of that plan I don't understand that purpose of those sentences in economy. Many of the recommendations of that plan are good ideas that make sense for the village, however, some of the recommendations don't make sense. For example, many vehicles in the area, information on towing boats, et cetera, I'm like, well, why is that even in there?
Well, that was the meeting in Aquasic that we had, and that was the downtown revitalization plan. And it's the Aquasic version of it, and it included sidewalks with curbing and every,
And they hated that.
and they hated
Oh,
that.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons why we did that second Aquasic.
Okay,
Meeting.
because I remember that discussion well.
Yeah.
And they've been very consistent with that message.
Yes,
With any of the meetings, okay. My only thought was, because we've used curbing as a way to direct water and stormwater, et cetera, so it's not always related to
Yes.
traffic, et cetera.
right,
I found that confusing,
Yeah.
just with,
right, that they, having,
the purpose of this in here.
Yeah.
They got a lot of stormwater issues out
that was the reason.
Mhm.
there.
Okay,
From the fire station right down through that.
so I just found that an odd addition for the economy section.
Okay.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that, Cindy, I agree that that's.
Well, are you okay with that explanation though?
I get it,
Yeah.
it just doesn't,
It kind of shines a light on a place that probably doesn't need a lot of light shined on it.
I'd almost take out that entire paragraph, really, because I don't think there's any.
Because,
upside.
I mean, if you think about vision, that was a series of kind of obstreperous meetings. And maybe that's not gonna be a thing going forward. So to like dump in some negativity probably isn't the best thing.
I think, I think we got, they were pretty clear, good point, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so is that an old discussion that's been resolved in terms of that, so that downtown revitalization plan? And there's a lot of stuff.
There are
Aquasic,
there are 2 plans.
right, there are 2 plans, so the Aquasic plan, is the town ever gonna consider doing all the sidewalks with the curbing and? Or was that
It was heard, it was an initial proposal, it was work that was paid for and done by the engineering firm. It's not being well received right now.
Right now, I think is the operative term.
Right.
It's money that was
But-
spent and wisely spent, in my opinion, because you can pull that off the shelf next year or 3 years from now or 4 years.
But it's
from now.
too late to amend the downtown revitalization.
So it's
plan.
separate than the.
Separate than
This was a village
range lease.
initiative.
Yeah, and it had a lot to it and it had a big price tag, which I think
Yes.
really scared a lot of people. It was, what is it?
$3 million
$8 million.
Bicycle thing.
That $3 million bridge. And the way that people today are using that little village center, and I get defining spaces. There's too many trailers and too much snow and too much plowing. It's a free for all there. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't know if you're driving in a parking lot or the street. You don't know.
Yeah, no, you can park wherever you
Yeah,
want.
Okay, so that's going in for a single person. I mean, this is something that is going in for a single person in hopes of getting their support for the plan. That, we're gonna be honest.
What is?
That whole clause there about parts of the study
Yeah,
are
I think-
good, huh?
No, I want you to finish what you said.
Yeah, that parts of the plan were good and other parts, but not all the parts were appropriate, such as.
Yeah, I mean, that plan really struggled in a number of different ways. I mean, if you sat in that meeting, you had Dennis Markey there, worked for
There are a
CMP
couple,
forever,
yeah.
who said the electrical plan was a complete disaster and poorly planned. You've got all those guys who deal with that out there, the coops,
Yeah.
and none of the water flows the way that they proposed or any of that stuff there. I think they were fine with like delineating, like the compromise I came up with those guys. I said, guys, what if we stripe pedestrian areas, or we do something that delineates where the road is and that? Do you agree that's a problem? Mike agrees with that. They even got it striped right in front of his garage now, so that,
And even
You don't have a lot of-
handicap
and he
landing
loves it.
areas, yeah.
and so I think the only thing I think about, this kind of grabs the third, and again, we're talking about the guys that are wound up about this will read this plan, twist it to a point that will have a negative impact on votes. So we gotta be very careful on how we structure it. That's my point.
I think, but for the sake of keeping all of this work and this engineering, it should be mentioned.
Yeah.
It should be mentioned as a standalone. This Aquasic Village Transportation Study, is that what it was called, Wendy?
I think so.
I put it on the
Yeah.
transportation second, leave it right.
And
out.
then, and just so it's there for the sake of history, and someone can be like, well, the work was already done.
Yeah, acknowledge the.
And we can just go get it. This is after, none of,
I think that's the right way to do it.
I agree.
Because you acknowledge that there was work done and say it should be examined at some
At
future
some
date.
point.
I think we take it right out of the economy section, leave it in the transportation section. Cut that one, 'cause that's really,
Speaking of
this is
that,
all transportation issues.
can I, since we're on that topic of aquatic administration, what's the status of those things? Particularly in aquatic.
Those are state.
Excellent question. There will be, I'm proposing a public hearing to the board on January, I think it's the 21st at 5 p.m., which will be the first official public hearing for this project. We held a kickoff meeting on the 9th with Maine DOT and Wright Garrison is the engineer of record on this. So the project is a go. It's moving forward. It's an 88-12 split, I think, the town is kicking in 12%.
That's a
State,
nice
state and
split.
federal highway kicking in the other 88%. So the project is a go. They won't look exactly like this, because Wright Garrison is going to refine it. Please come on the 21st, if the board sets that as the public hearing date, that's when you'll have a chance to give the first initial round of public comment on the design. That's a go.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Well, that certainly has a direct impact to what we're talking about right now.
Well, it does, and that's why I say, I understand the feedback that came from the VPI, I totally get it, and I agree with a lot. But I think it is in the town's best interest to remind the future you, that this project, this is on the shelf in my office.
Yes.
And you don't have to build it as written, just like this comp plan. You don't have to build it as written,
Yes,
just
yes.
look at the music sometimes,
Yeah.
whatever key you want.
Mhm.
Just remember the tempo's there for you,
100%.
right?
Yeah, fair.
That's
Okay,
Right,
okay.
okay.
I will, make some adjustments to that.
Yeah, I think that should go out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else while we're on this?
we just take a, see if there's anything.
Which one are we doing? We're on
Economy.
the economy.
I just like throughout, if we can get away from tourism and visiting.
I
like
thought I changed, I did.
I think you
The
got
first-
them all.
I did
Yeah.
find replace.
First paragraph is still there. There's 2 tourism references there.
Yeah, visitation applies so much to this area too, because
Increased winter tourism, I changed that to visitation.
you can't really categorize hunting and fishing as tourism. You know?
No, it really isn't.
There are visitors here.
And prolonged,
You
yeah.
can snow it.
I don't know, Donna, if there is a way to, okay, so I'm on page, sorry, I've got my, okay, yeah, let me just see where I made the notes on my black and white copy. And then I'll put it into where you have it placed here.
It's about an hour left too.
I know,
Right.
we've got,
Okay.
yeah,
So the only thing while she's looking
Yeah,
for everything,
go ahead.
on page 6, we said a 176% increase over 2010. What's the reference point? Should it be 176.6% increase as of 2023, as of 2024, as of 2022? What is the reference?
You mean, she says according to main revenue services.
Yeah, but that doesn't tell you a year.
Is the data 2024 data that would?
Yeah, that's,
Oh, yeah, no.
there's no reference to the,
It would be 2023.
yeah, I mean, that's fine, I just say, it's great data, I just wondered, you know, are we tying 2010 to 2023, or are we tying to 2020?
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Okay, that's all with that, I mean, that one caught my eye.
I found, and it's just a suggested point of clarification, because I know the statistic grabbed me initially. So on page 2, near the top, it's, one of the bullets is the average weekly wage in the region has gone up 42% from the 2019 average to 2023. However, on page 8, near the bottom, in the red section, just above the crossed out occupation chart, in the same period of 2019-2023, the state minimum wage increased from 11 to 13.80, and the tip wage from 5.50 to 6.90, both representing a 25.5% increase. I don't know if that 25.5% increase should be
Extracted.
into this 42%.
Yeah, but it's not, yeah.
It's not just,
a number.
yeah. I guess the thing of it is for people to read it and be like, well, that's why it's so expensive to live here. It's just- just to kind of add that.
That's a good point.
But I also think you need to scrub it against, you gotta also scrub it against, the overall inflationary things that are done there, and I think if you work it out, it's maybe not, this 42 might not be the jump. Yeah, you got
It's
25
broad
for wage
number.
that got kicked up,
Yeah,
it should be some kind of a reference to
You
that.
could say that, there was a 25.5% mandated, wage increase, you know,
For-
with the other.
I think it's just something simple like
Yeah.
that, just say this reflects, you know, a combined 25.5% increase in the tip wages and state minimum
And
wage
overall
increase.
inflation.
Just for that big picture, so it's not just about range.
And you don't
I
even
don't think
have
my
to,
wages increased 42%.
Mine didn't, I know they didn't.
you don't even have to talk about tip wages either, because they're tied to minimum,
Right.
you know,
I'd
so.
leave it out,
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
would really leave that out.
Yeah, so just say, yeah,
Just say
that
25.5.
25.5%
Yeah.
reflects.
Because the tip wage is a doctored thing off of the minimum wage, so I think we just leave it out.
That's just what that was one.
Yeah, no, that's a
That's a
good
great
point.
point. Good one, Cindy. Okay, is there anything else we need to cover on this economy section? Again, is there any way in here that we can reference, the more I want to reference into statute things, I just think that gives the document longer shelf life.
I have been including them, there's more of them.
In the other
in
chapters.
natural resources, because there's things that govern them.
Is there a way I know you're taking that sentence out about the tip wage there, that I really wanna make sure we footnote stuff there as much as we can, even if it's just the little footnote thing, and at the end of the book, we put the resources, because I think it's gonna be important when somebody pulls this out in 5 or 6 years and said, hey, they provided this, let's go pull.
Well,
Let's
I
go pull
always
the core
put the
data.
source right there, not.
Yeah, but
the
it's just in
source.
general what it says, it doesn't say where it's located.
You mean,
Yeah, like there should be a reference to where the information can get, it just says domain labor or whatever, I just think there should be all these things exist out there.
I can do that to some extent, I can't do it for everything, but,
Maybe we can list in the back and say, you know, our contacts at the contact at main labor, list not the name, but the
Sources,
position,
yeah.
the source, in the sources and reference. I just want something that if a bomb goes off and all of us are going, somebody can pick this up, they've got another place to look. And be like, well, how the hell did Donna find this, whatever, at least there's a.
well, Adcom. Yeah, I mean, I can, so,
If Adcom's still there.
yeah, so, we can get into that when we talk about housing, because I put that section on data and housing because that's when and I'm not saying that it belongs there, but I needed to do it.
Yeah,
I needed to get it somewhere, and then I think the thing is to cut and paste it to somewhere else, which I think is probably the introduction. And, but I don't wanna jump into housing until you're ready.
but I also think, I did see on page 9, the business owners reportedly need the need for more employee housing to attract new employees to keep. That's a valid thing, but I think we also should mention that some business owners have made that investment.
Yeah.
Because there are some
And
that have,
they're fortunate enough to do that. I mean, you know firsthand, Chris.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he.
but
he
he's
is-
not the only one that's done that.
No, I realize that, but
Marisol's
he's,
done it,
pro-
and a few others,
he is,
Most won't have that ability.
no, most of them won't, exactly.
But that's where, you know, expanding in, when we get into housing, allowing some of the historic types of housing that Rangeley has had before
Right.
might, you know, take the pressure off the seasonal employees, like a bunkhouse or
Right.
a rooming lodge or something like that, you know?
And that's the thing, like, yeah, Marisol took the building that's right next door to
Yeah,
there,
the
and
gingerbread place, yeah.
yeah, and that had been there forever, and it served a number of different uses, and now it's serving 10 employees or something like that, so,
Right.
and it's worked out great.
Yeah, and they
They-
can actually save some money.
Yeah, and if they not all of them have cars, so they're right in town, so they can get to everywhere they need to go, and it's worked out well. I think it's important to kind of recognize some of the successes, because I think that
Yeah.
encourages people to do that.
Yeah.
And it's a question, and there are, some of the ones I hear probably the loudest about it are also doing residential development in large scales on the other side and not dealing with it.
Well, like Lee
So-
Libby said, Lee Libby has bought,
Lee Libby's done it. I know one particular business in town that's tied to a lot of the large developments. On the personal side, well, there's no place for affordable, well, they're not taking care of it. Ush and Wayne have done it for years. They provided for all the Looney Bin employees, almost all of them, they provided housing.
yeah.
They did, before it was even a housing.
Before was,
project.
yeah, it was, yeah, they did.
Yeah,
So anyways, yeah, I think that,
I think it's important to recognize
the
that some have
economy and
solved the
housing
solution.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
that is worth mentioning.
I just think some have solved it themselves, not all of them are complaining, some have actually said,
Some
okay,
have, yeah,
it's my job,
It is
I want to attract employees, I need to do it, it's just like another business.
It's workforce and housing that are tied tightly together.
Mhm,
Yeah.
And obviously both those impact the economy.
right,
So
Right.
I think
Right.
that's what I
But I
like,
do-
what Greg said about the workforce housing organization,
Right.
because it links it to things.
I think that's one thing we really need to push in the housing section, is that there needs to be a development authority.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Or tied to a regional one, whether it's Paul's.
Well, we consider that or develop wrong either way. I have a question on the third, page 13, the last part of this. You know, policy mentions recognize that outdoor recreation and visitation or tourism will be ranked as long-term economic engine, and then goes on to say, while working to diversify that base. I feel like that category about recognizing and supporting outdoor recreation and tourism should be its own line item, and that diversify economic base could be moved to the next policy, which talks about support and strengthen existing businesses and work to diversify.
Steve, this whole thing's going away and it's replaced with this.
Oh, so I have the whole thing that I was looking at.
Yeah, you need to look at, for the economy, you need to look at this table
All right, never mind.
and just,
All right.
Yeah, the 11 items, right, that's the replacement.
yes.
Okay, sorry, never mind.
And.
And I really think just do the find replace and go right through it, take in tourism and see
I
every
already
place that
did
pops up.
that, but I.
Tourism must have been misspelled. didn't it?
Yeah, because I'm seeing,
Oh,
I'm seeing it in several spots.
That happens.
Yeah,
okay.
I've had that happen to me when I do
Oh,
a
yeah.
find.
Well, once I get this, once I can accept it, I can get out of track changes,
You can
then
see
it's,
it.
then I can see.
Well, once we're out of the whole thing and we got a fresh copy, what I like to do is I stand up and I read it out loud.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then all of a sudden, it hits me right in the head, any screw ups.
all right, are we ready to
you
move
don't have
on?
to do that during the meeting.
Just thinking the same thing.
Are we ready to move on?
Yeah, I think so, good job.
Okay, let's jump into housing because, It is.
I'm gonna do it if Joe.
I'm not available then, Nick.
Give me more shit, Joe.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I
Share.
was thinking of like a singing in the shower type
Yeah,
of
like
thing. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, we digress.
Wow. I didn't know, wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Parks, places
There
to
you
rain.
go, there you go.
You got permission.
So let's close the meeting, reopen it, and we can charge. We're charging for 2, right?
Yes.
It's still.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
No.
Not that I care about the cash.
Oh, good lord. Okay, so we're
Okay. All right, here we go.
All right, so what are the big things you wanna talk about?
All right. We have already talked about, some of them we've talked about, so I've got them up here. So we've already talked about a TDR program. We have talked about, we've talked about density bonuses for affordable housing. And I think the thing with that is to make sure that the affordability is protected in the long term, that it doesn't become, windfalls.
I think it's easy, you do the exit strategy and.
There's different ways to do it and.
They go to sell the entity and it goes to market, and that gets a penalty back.
Did
to
you
me.
wanna delete affordability from this thing?
I don't,
Because of the state language.
Yeah, that's part
I
of the
mean,
problem.
it is consistent with state language. State affordability means something very specific. And in the housing section,
Yeah, but it's specific, what is that?
okay,
You know,
look
what
on
is that?
page 6 of the housing section.
Yeah.
And I included the state definition of what it is, and then it's also tied to median income. So I gave you what the median income was. It fluctuates.
That makes it clear though.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
And this is where I have that, either creating a nonprofit, joining an existing one, somehow get some entity who knows how to do these things.
A housing
And-
trust, you're thinking.
Yeah, a housing trust who knows how to, write grants and keeps up to date with the programs and can oversee, because you have to do, you have to make sure that people are income qualified. So there's certain stuff that you have to do, and I think that, I think it needs to be a budget item. It needs to be like, if you go with Western Maine Mountain Housing, there needs to be a staff person. And there would be a cost associated with that, so when the budget comes up, you need to have that.
Would that entity encompass like a, home acquisition incubator type of process? Meaning like sometimes the entry into the market is the hardest for younger folks. And so I've seen some housing trusts actually have a program where they assist with the down payment.
There's all sorts of things.
Especially in a designated growth area that was attached to, well, to Cindy's point too, in the village area that had public water and sewer. And, they sometimes, what I've seen is they made a commitment to stay and work in the town for a number of years to enjoy the gift that they received.
So that is a very cool thing, so this is the thing. You have your state and federal money, and when you use state and federal money, you gotta play by their rules. You have your own money, you get to make your own rules.
I love my own rules.
So that's where, so you have this housing development, and a private entity is gonna own it, right?
Yes.
The workforce housing.
Correct.
So they will be a taxpayer,
Yes.
and you have an affordable housing TIF on it?
It's a downtown
Downtown.
omnibus tip.
Okay, which allows for
Which
that.
allows. for-
So that will be going in there. So there'll be X amount of dollars. Let's say there's $50,000 going into that, for that. You could say as part of the budgeting process, you know, when you go through and you do your budgeting for your TIF, you know, you have your TIF funds and you set up what you're gonna do with that during the budgeting process. You could say, okay, we wanna start, you know, we've decided that we wanna do a homeownership program and we wanna help folks get into housing, and we're gonna give them, I don't know, $10,000, or we're gonna do whatever. And then, you know, you figure out how you get that back. So it's, you know, it might be interest-free, it might be a really low form of interest, but, you know, that they need to pay back, maybe it's when they sell. Maybe it's because that's where you get into that whole windfall thing.
Right.
You know, you get your $10,000, you buy it, you sell it, and then and there goes that $10,000.
And it's gotta work with whatever loan program they are applying for with a bank.
Exactly,
That
exactly.
bank isn't gonna like an immediate repayment,
Right, so,
process, most
but
likely.
that's the beauty of it, because you get to set the rules.
Right.
You get to decide,
You could even set it up as a grant program,
You could.
you know, and that wouldn't affect funding at all.
but that's where having someone clever in the
Creative,
housing,
out of the box
who
thing.
can, and the money available to do it.
Right.
So if the town says, you know, let's say the town says with that TIF allocation, housing is such a big issue, we need to focus on housing. And we need to use this money, we have identified properties, we wanna buy them. Maybe you have a willing land, you know, if you can find someone who's willing to sell at a certain, you know, at a fair market value or whatever, then, you know, you decide, I mean, that's a fiscal decision that you make every year. And the plan is gonna be there to back it up, to say how important it is. You know, it is consistent, because I think that, you know, like the number one problem, if I was to say what the number one problem in Rangeley is, it's lack of this affordable housing, attainable housing, housing that the typical person can afford.
You know, and to Cindy's point, not to open the can of bees again, but when, you know, you were talking about, short-term rentals and the village center, and I think Rockland does this, so they have a very restrictive, short-term rental policy. But if you, I don't think that would work here, but if you took the village, just that is on public water and public sewer, and I think what you're saying, if I'm reading into it, restricting the amount allowed in that little ring and have that be your designated growth
Yeah,
area.
That was my point.
Right, and so I get it, you're never gonna rent to a dishwasher if you're ringing the ponds here at the lakes, like, those are not rental
They are
properties.
not rental.
But they're
no,
short-term rental properties.
And that's fine.
To mitigate the
Yes.
tax bill, but in the urban center, not urban, but in the village center, maybe, and not do it, but think about it. Because those are the houses for the teachers and the fire department and the policemen.
Yeah.
And not necessarily like section 8 housing, but a little cape, you know,
Right.
or somebody that wants to just.
Or an apartment, or
Right.
a variety.
And it takes the pressure off the spread and the leach into, you know, protected resource land, you know, in the areas. And, you know, you can't, there's always a step up, right? But if that was a house that an average earner could afford, and the inventory was there and not consumed in a different way, they could potentially sell it to someone else and then move to their big 5-acre lot somewhere, you know?
Right.
I mean, that we're missing that first step.
Right, it's that
Yeah.
first step.
Well, it is, and a number of folks, you know, purchase those as first primary homes. At least historically,
Right.
that has been a, you know, a
But
big.
that's how it is across the country,
Right,
you know?
right. Right,
And-
so,
But if you're in a destination where everyone wants a piece of the pie, you know, and you obliterate the ability for people that are committed to living here from buying something, it's an imbalance,
That's my
right?
point. That's been my point all along.
Right, and I think that, you know, if brokers, you know, people who are out there in the field, Brad, you know, you're out there, you're doing inspections and stuff, and you see something,
Mhm.
and it might be tricky, or it might, you know, that's when I think you bring it to the town's attention,
Right,
you know? I mean-
especially with the additional dwelling unit, you know,
Yeah, I
availability,
mean-
those at LD 2007 or something like that, the state just popped out a couple of years ago. I mean, there's a lot of people that own property that are like, oh my God, I can't pay my taxes.
Right,
But they could-
however.
They could do
have
something,
access.
and that could be a rental property, you
Right.
know?
Right,
That's a marketing mission, really.
And that's part of what that new program is through the Main State Housing, is to help people do that.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, oh, okay, you know, I mean, I'm the older person, I wanna stay in my house, I have a big house, I don't need it anymore. There's some money available to be able to do that. That's what somebody in a housing authority, they could develop these programs. And be
And
able to
market it, you know, that's.
and
like you
market
said.
it and talk to folks, and all they're doing, they're not doing it for them, they're putting people together.
Putting people together.
They're, you know, it's like, oh, you need to talk to Joe in Augusta, let me send an email with, you know, I mean, how it happens, that's the point. And so I think that, you know, it becomes a budget, you know, something for the budget. One thing here, and this is something that's in chapter 38 now, is that if you had, I'm gonna call commercial and residential on one property as mixed use. So if you have that mixed use, you need to double the minimum lot size.
It's nuts.
Which I'm saying is, let's just get rid of that. Let's just strike that little piece out of chapter 38, which would allow, if somebody, let's say the IGA has, you know, that piece of land is bigger, or they don't need that whole parking lot. The parking lot is maybe a little bit bigger than what they thought. And they could take a portion of that and build a little boarding house or something, and whatever works for them. That they would be able to, if they have the land and if they can provide the parking and all of that stuff, that they could have it right on their property.
Without having to buy.
What, so that's
Yeah, I mean,
really,
it's not gonna work for
So what is-
everyone.
so what you're talking about proposing density can be adjusted if it makes sense? That's a-
No, I'm
hard-
just saying you allow, just take away that automatically you have to double the minimum lot size,
mixed
just
use.
take that out, just mixed use works. You have setbacks, you have lot coverage, you have parking, you have all these other requirements. But if you're gonna do multiple commercials, you don't have to worry about it, but if commercial and residential are mixing, boom, you gotta double the minimum lot
So are you
size.
gonna articulate that specifically in the comp plan? Say,
Yeah,
we should remove this from this?
I'm
We-
talking
we
about
still
it in
stick with it?
terms, well, I'm talking about in terms of barriers. And so I'm talking about this as a barrier.
So it should be a consider.
Yes, it is absolutely a
Well, that's
consider.
kind of where I was going.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
everything,
it's a good question.
everything is that.
Mhm.
But what I talk about is we need to remove barriers zoning barriers that discourage.
You're setting this table in the plan, and then you're saying, this is kind of what's going on, this is a problem.
So,
And
Yes.
so consider solving the
Yeah.
problem by doing X.
And then I think that's where we could talk about reducing or increasing build to on sites, because I mean, to be frank, I mean, on a personal level, I've looked at my house. I got this old garage that's sat there forever that I'd like to tear down and build a better setup and then do an apartment unit up above that can be rented to a lifty or somebody else.
And you
I have
not,
plenty
you
of parking.
can't do that.
I can't, because it's 20-foot setback, all that, this is not a problem.
And then you're right in the village. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, doesn't make sense that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally got Chip right down below me swinging hamburgers, pizza, and I got Sandy and Ken, which are right next to me, and we can. And it doesn't affect, I mean, I own my lot, we know exactly where the lots are,
Right.
so it's like. It would make, to me, that would make more sense, because there are people around us that say, yeah, do a new garage and put a EDU up above, and that solves the problem, but
So,
you can't do it because of setbacks and.
Well, that-
look at page 9 of the housing. Did- And again, the numbers are not easy to see.
All right, we're down to 35 minutes.
Yep, so if you look at the bottom where it says future housing needs, so that would probably read in the future. And you look at that first, it talks about there's a wide variety of solutions to get the job done. For example, bullet 1, removing barriers in the zoning ordinance to allow higher densities in a wide variety of housing types.
Sounds good.
Pretty darn
That's nice. Yeah.
basic.
Yeah,
And then if you look on page 11, in the chart there of the ideas, number 1 is updating amendments to the land use ordinance that should have chapter 38 in there. And number C, it gives a little more detail.
yep, yeah, and you've got in there, you've got increased density, decreased lot size, setbacks and road widths to provide incentives for density bonus. I mean, infill development's what we're talking about, we're talking about like the IGA property. I mean, to me,
Right.
You could.
So that's how it's set up.
Yeah, the only thing that we're missing there is that we also say, other, listen different, and one of the other things is always the tail that wags the dog, which is funny, is parking. We always allow parking to that, which is funny, because literally, when we moved to town, my son was a teenager, he had a longboard, there's nobody in town, almost every night he could ride, the whole Main Street was his to have during the week, Cause
Probably Pleasant Street too.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, I mean, there's some people now that park on the side, and I get for snow plowing, we need to limit that, but there's a lot of different options there. And
Is there anywhere in this, I haven't seen it, and should we even put this in there, something to consider, or are we as a community considering expanding the, systems, the sewer systems and things like that?
Well, so I talked to the sewer department. Yeah, that's always a very good question. I talked to the sewer department and they said, oh yeah, we can handle more. I said, well, how much more can you handle? And I didn't have that answer.
Yeah. But
So
should
I
that
don't know
be
if you
some-
have any capacity studies that were done.
No, but they're in good shape with that, and like the water district's fine. We did
Yeah.
we just put a whole new redundancy in, which if you paid it, I don't know if you saw any of that project going on, that was running from the old Lake Road
Yeah.
and over to Richardson Street. We did that because there was only one pipe that serviced the entire part of
Right.
town.
Was that the wooden pipe?
No.
But I guess my question is more specifically about
With the flag
putting
pole.
language
Yeah.
on a plan.
Well, what do you think, Joe, about putting language in the public services to do a study of the capacity of the plant, or do you think they're pretty good?
I think I would need to check the current documents and answer that question.
I think we've already spent a lot of money on that area. They just did that whole thing about adding the new
Yeah.
potential to run sewer all the way to a crossing, which was crazy.
If you've got any information on.
But they
that,
must have
I
pulled the
didn't-
capacity.
They
Well,
have
I'm
to.
sure we'll put
Yeah.
it down here. Well, Saddleback,
What's that?
what if they were to be interested in tapping into the system?
They don't need to.
They don't?
No, because the way that's all permitted up there, it's not based on fixtures, it's based on use. They have to be at 90% capacity.
Okay.
75% capacity, 90% of the time, which will never happen.
Okay.
And they have an extra whole septic field that's all septic. The very stood ups.
All right.
So.
But I was just thinking, in terms of expanding,
But
housing
But
location.
I don't know if it would work, you need a pump station, because you get to the Beaver Bog and then you have a pump hill. If you don't think that's a hill,
It's not all down.
I tell you what, if you're not sure if that's a hill, Meet up with me sometime, we'll get our ride bikes, we'll ride from the base lodge to town.
Yeah.
You'll realize by the time you get to Jimmy Quimby's that you're gonna need defibrillator. Pretty good hill.
All right, so we've talked about,
Ask me how I know that.
I'm suggesting in the definition of housing that we have all sorts of things, like, there's currently a definition for a boarding house and a lodging house. That should be fixed, we should just have one and,
I think we should talk about, yeah, I think it's
and,
more about, single units versus shared services and that, I mean,
yeah.
we're finding that European model is actually coming back, where people are fine with shared services, I mean, that's what Marisol's done.
And in some cases, it might be small studios that have little kitchenettes and, whatever.
I think we should allow the wording, I think, should be something to the effect that if it's helping to solve workforce housing, there's a lot of flexibility.
Right, and if you're just coming for the summer, and there's employees that you need just for July and August, because they're the busiest time, then, living in a boarding house probably isn't a big deal. If you wanna do it year round, maybe not, so, so having a wide variety of options, I think, is key.
I agree with that.
And that we keep the definitions flexible and I've even thought that we could call that employee housing or worker housing or something like that and make that its own definition and own land use.
Outside of workforce?
Well, outside of the typical single-family duplex multifamily.
Oh, you're talking like the boarding house?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And then you allow those in certain districts and it's a wide variety of things. And I also, like if somebody had the right land and they wanted to set some yurts up or something, or, go for it because they don't need it for the winter. I think that whatever it is that gets the job done.
Right, and they'd have to drill down to the percentage of the year that it was used so that Breck and,
Yeah.
Carl don't have to stress out over the septic use and.
Well, the only thing I get concerned about is that kind of opens us up to the hip camp concern that we talked about before.
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, hip camp is apparently a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And, is it hip? I don't know, is it hip for Rangeley? Is it?
No, but I mean,
It seems to
it's-
be hip for Carabasset.
but I think that's the question is, obviously that we.
And how much can you regulate that? See,
Well,
the thing.
that's the
If
problem.
you can't regulate it, how
You can't
is,
enforce it.
yeah, you
Yours,
can't
yours are a
enforce it.
challenge, I mean, those type of things, I mean, they're doing it, I know that Survivor Bob there.
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
it.
he's got his own little,
Yeah, he talked to me about that years ago when he was up here, he loved the style back here.
yeah.
He decided to build a few of those and it worked, but I mean, I think the wastewater part's obviously the biggest challenge.
Well, and that's always the thing, is that you have to be able to provide sanitary services, and cooking and, but.
And I do know of a plan that is being brought, which I don't know if it's gotten to the town yet, but there is some talk of some increased camping services being offered
I
around.
was gonna say small motorhomes are more likely to be,
Yeah,
show
well,
up.
my folks pitched one here 20 years ago, and
Yeah,
they got
they're
blown out of
still-
the water. It was over where the forestry, they owned all that land over there. They were gonna put a nice, properly set up one, and everybody thought it was the second coming of Jesus.
Okay, do you wanna go through this, or are we good on housing? I mean,
The housing, I think you've covered, I mean, we just got this, right, some of this stuff.
I looked at the housing, I like
Yeah.
it here now, but like you, I'd love to see a clean copy of it.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty important, I mean,
So what's our goal, if we can do some of this, and we can get the action, and we can get the economy and the housing one, and maybe the ag.
yeah,
forest.
I got transportation from Erica on Friday, I didn't get a chance to read it, so I haven't given it to you. I
What's
will
first
get
to
it
go to the
you.
select board?
What?
What's the first one we wanna send for initial draft?
So Steve, historic resources, I think you
You're in
know,
pretty good shape there, right?
Yeah, that's-
we've talked about that one. So we have historic resources, we have the population, and I sent that to you, and I think that everything is good, but for every table had a different format to it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask her to
Clean them up,
review
so to
that
speak.
and,
I have a question about
Yeah.
that, and I have a couple notes for historic too. For the stuff you got for population, this is just data. There's nothing
there's nothing you can
actionable.
do about it.
No, it's
Okay,
just,
so
yeah.
in terms of how it's gonna be laid out in the plan, this is gonna be we're gonna do history, and then we're gonna do population,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna go to the supernova 2 elements.
Economy and
economy
housing.
And lifestyle and Rangeley or whatever it be,
Mhm.
okay? For the historic, I didn't know if you were referencing a historic overlay district. I guess I just wrote that as a question. And then I wondered who's in charge of cataloging the historic properties, because I know over time, you know, a C becomes a B and then a B becomes an A. You know how that goes?
Right, yeah.
Because something built in 1940 might be a category C historic home, but in 30 years becomes an A, you know?
Yeah, so who's auditing?
Is that
Well, I mean, I had discussions with historic Rangeley about that,
Yeah,
and they would take that on.
That's
They could
great.
be the,
Well, the other thing I worry about though is anytime nonprofits come and go.
that's normally who's in charge all over the place with that catalog.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, but I also wanna make sure we have it tethered to even under maybe Joe's job description or somebody, that it's tethered back to the town. So at least
Yeah.
you've got a way to go if all of a sudden, you know, Ken and all those guys go away and there's nobody left to run. We've seen a few nonprofits collapse and then
The
rebirth.
Historical Society, the players come and go, but I think
Yeah.
if they submitted if we asked them to submit a report with each comprehensive plan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be-
no, I'm fine with that.
I think that's a great.
They're a great
start
organization, they're
for
pretty
the
strong.
Board of Selectmen. I think that you did a great job on
Yeah,
that
yeah, you did a
chapter,
great job.
Steve, and it reads really nicely.
Mhm.
It's well
yeah,
And then
paced.
I'd like to see if we could get that
So what
onto them
about-
sooner than later.
What about, the water and natural resources, like
Gonna
combine that?
Yes,
We're building
yes.
super chapters, now, right?
Combine that, but then I think it's ready. Now, that's a very regulatory, those are very regulatory chapters. And most of that stuff was all part of the 2012 plan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense.
well, and it doesn't change too much unless the
But-
wetland map changes.
There are a few changes that I've put in, and that's engineering review as part of the technical review. When you're doing these bigger projects, is have a civil engineer looking at it, making sure that the erosion control, it's all about phosphorus erosion, stormwater.
Right, runoff.
And then to have an engineer inspect new roads, inspect site, especially if you're right on the road.
Mhm.
Make sure that everything's been done according to what the plan was, and that is also in there. So I can, if you're good with that, we can do the water, natural resources, super chapter, the population,
Yeah, and I
historic.
really wanna look over the phosphorus stuff, because a lot of that's bullshit and it's gonna go away.
Well, you did
Yeah,
do some on that already.
right, but I just wanna make sure we're careful that
Well, can
we
you
outline.
look at it?
Yeah, I'll look at it again.
I have one comment for natural resources. It's on page 3, and it's the use of the word riparian, meaning like riverbank. So there's 2 ways that people interpret that word. One is the legal way and one is the ecological way. And they're similar in meaning, but they're a little bit different. So I just wanted to say that.
We should
You know,
define it.
Right. Because the law is situated on the banks of a river and ecology is relating to the wetlands adjacent to rivers and waterways. And maybe in terms of zoning, that would be something that we would want to get a little more flushed out,
So, I mean, that's as simple as
just saying what's what.
a riparian, whatever it is.
Yes.
The environmental definition.
Oh, and then there's that list of creatures also on page 3, like they talk about beavers, raccoons and all that stuff, like, I don't know, do you have to list them all?
It's a list of creatures.
I don't know, it's like. But then I thought, well, we don't have a charter, so it doesn't matter, like, one isn't
Well, we don't
listed.
regulate the raccoons.
Oh, I know. We should, no. It's all raccoon trash kitties. No, I just wondered the list. I was probably from.
Can you send me that water chapter as it's in? With the
Yeah,
party,
yeah,
want me
you
to,
have all of them.
Oh, and then there's a
Yeah.
grammar thing, I know we're not going there, because that's one of the chapters we're going, there's quotes near blue backed trout, but there's no end quote.
and then Joe, can you preface when that chapter goes out, we're looking for them to look at content and things. We're not looking for them to be a publisher clearinghouse editor at this
Right.
point. If they wanna point out stuff, but the primary
I'll go to
focus.
that meeting too, since I'm the liaison, and explain that to them, you know.
Okay.
Is there an early Jan,
Yeah.
when is there a Jan, is there a
Jan 18 probably, or are they meeting Jan 2nd?
6th, that would
June
be,
6th, yeah.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
6, I'll still.
Can we get on that? Is it too late for that?
no, that would be the next one.
Yeah, cause you're done for the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could
They
we-
meet Monday, but that agenda is stable because it's critical.
Well, can you set the stage, and what would be great is that
Yes,
it gets sent out to them on Monday, so they say, hey, in your email, there's this, we're gonna.
Not
be talking
Monday in 2 days.
about- What's left, I thought it was ready.
No, I can't, no,
Well, I-
I've got it.
They're not gonna look at it anyway, Chris, it's Christmas.
Yeah, but I'd like to get it out before the holiday.
Yeah.
I don't wanna send it to them with their packet on the 2nd. Maybe another copy.
I don't think they'll look at it before then, Chris.
Really?
When
Yeah.
you do, I mean, I don't think they will. Yeah.
I
So-
still have a couple on there that open them up at the meeting.
So so if I came up for the meeting on the 6th,
I think Wendy can handle it. And
I'll go
then
with
you're
Mark.
establishing utility there too.
well, I was thinking, I mean, we have the remaining chapters that we need to do this kind of huddle on. I mean, the 1
This is
hour
much more
meetings
efficient.
just aren't getting it
I'm
done.
fine with a 3 hour meeting. Saturday's not the best day for me.
Oh, it isn't for me either, but that's,
So we made it
Yeah.
work this time.
yeah.
But I don't mind coming up on the 6th, could we meet on the 7th?
What day is that?
And
Tuesday.
I don't know, if the board hasn't met you, Donna, hasn't seen you, they really should. You bring a lot to this process. And so if you can't make it on the 6th, at least zoom in. 'Cause
yeah, no, I would prefer not to zoom in actually.
Okay, yeah,
I would like to come, but I do like to
yeah.
pair it up with other things too.
Mhm.
What
Well,
else
you
is happening
came
on
for-
January 7th?
You came to the meeting on the 6th. I'm gonna schedule another work session.
Well, that's exactly right.
That's what I'm
right.
talking about. So either on the 6th or the 7th. Yeah.
I could get cut out of work early.
Do you wanna do like a 3 to 6 on the 7th?
Yeah, I mean, select board is what, 4 o'clock on the 6th, something like that,
They meet at 6.
6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or do you guys wanna meet in the morning?
I don't wanna meet, I
I
can't,
don't like to meet. in the
I don't
morning.
like-
I got too much going on. My phone just
Yeah,
goes all the
yeah.
time.
So, what about the 7th? What about?
Yeah, well, I'm asking what time.
Like 4:30 in the afternoon?
I can do earlier with notice, so if we do 3, 3 to 6, if
All right,
that's.
let's do that.
So that's the 7th, and
The
that's 3, we're saying, 3 o'clock?
3 to
That's
6.
awesome.
I like it.
We could probably-
Another double meeting, Joe?
Gotta clock in, we're gonna have to clock in.
Yeah.
no, I think
Okay.
what you should do actually is recess this one until the 7th. That way the town will basically one.
That's fair.
Well, thanks. You didn't get my.
Old Joe
You
has
didn't,
arrived.
you didn't get my letter where, you didn't get my letter where I said I'm charging you at my normal billable rate? So that's 300 an hour, so you owe me 900 for today.
6?
Yeah. And that's on the 6th, that's the Board of Selectmen. It's on the
900
6th,
works.
right?
Yes.
Okay, anything else, Donna? We got 17 minutes.
Okay,
Are you in a good, it's okay if you're in a good spot. I think we covered a lot.
well, the next thing, what I want you to be thinking about is how do we get this information out to people? So what I'm thinking is we have the, the rough plan as it, with all the various chapters. But I would like to do, I'm thinking about taking the Rangeley, the looking into the future, those few bullet points on every chapter and the list of ideas and printing them out like in poster form.
It sounds good.
And finding a place to put them, or doing them on some 11x17s, and trying to find a place where people can just, can they come in here during the day and walk around? I don't know, how do we, what's the best way to get it out to people? I've tried working with the Highlander and I haven't heard back from the guys,
They're
so,
just about dead. There's no Stephanie anymore.
It was a new contact that I sent you that.
I think the journal
Yeah,
took it
I
over.
didn't- Yeah, but she sent me off to somebody different.
If you stole something or hit somebody, they call you right back.
Okay,
All right, we gotta steal something.
all
All
right.
right, Wendy, you're on it.
Okay.
That's task us.
Yeah, that's it.
I had Wendy
If
do that.
you can get on the sheriff body, you got a good shot at getting the contact.
So what I'm trying to
could do
do
it.
is
It's
come
sure
up
a lot
with
of fun.
something like for, the end of January into February.
What if you utilized the school gymnasium and did your poster idea, and then you also had Post-it notes like the LUPEC meeting did, so people could actually make little comments if
I
they,
like that format.
you know?
I do too. I'd rather do it up in the cafeteria, it's
Or
just because
wherever.
we only have 50 or so people show up and it's.
So is that like a Saturday thing, or is that I'm thinking multi-days, but.
I'm thinking probably a visit to some board meetings. Chamber, library,
Yeah, but
historical,
to me, I really feel that if we really wanna get this out there, we've got to switch back, we gotta look at our demographic, we gotta look at who our voters are. And I think a lot of them are gonna wanna read it in written form, and then maybe provide, allow them a way to provide some content back, and let them know we're gonna do some meetings. We're getting the same 5 or 6 people showing up to the meeting, and it's not working.
So what, a couple meetings ago, Chris, you were the one that recommended this, that we use a mailer, send out a
Yes.
postcard. And maybe once we get all these chapters kind of put
As a general
together,
plan
you
is
could
there.
get, a QR code where people with their phone can click
Yes,
on that,
yes.
they could read the report.
And if they
And
want
what
a
would be
paper
great-
copy, we have them.
And then, yeah, and list it right on there, paper copy available at the town hall,
If-
free of charge.
free of charge.
Right,
Right,
Yeah.
so they know that.
it's not 8 cents a page.
Right.
No, but they're, I, really,
They
the-
matter.
and then what I think is gonna.
Try that. Reach back out and see.
Yeah,
No, I wanna do the Highlander
seemed
no
really
matter what,
interested.
but nobody's reading the Highlander anymore.
It's.
well,
It's
it would be like a pullout, so it would be instead of
That's what you get.
this.
Oh, so it could be like a standalone app.
See, to me, that won't be a good investment of money.
What if
If
you
we're
do
gonna do it,
Mail
we do it,
messenger,
we do it, we do
that
it.
comes
Daily
free.
Bulldog.
That comes free, we can pay them out, that, we can get our daily builders, we can drop them out
Mountain
So
Messenger
there's
is
a freebie that
publication.
comes every week.
Thursday.
Wendy, your house is still for sale in the Mountain Messenger. It's,
I told Carolyn that, I've seen it like 8 times, and like, what a difference.
you open up, he's like, that house back on the market again? Cause we've got friends on the
Yeah,
road.
Well, how do we talk to them? How do we?
Well, my manager is Jody Cordelio, do you want me to just text her a number? You can call her.
Okay.
She's the editor and owner. She's great.
Oh, we could do one of those like fake ads in there to get attention.
Pick up, take that, that's a
That's a
great
good
idea.
I always do those, actually, one year.
Did you really?
$10 thing with the champagne.
We could say, Town of Rangeley instituting
Requiring
17
clustering.
Section 8 housing project on Mingo Loop.
But are you gonna do any other games?
Huh?
Are you ready to any of the other?
I love that.
That would be an attention getter.
I love it.
Timmy used to be the town manager here and Gavin and. all.
Oh, my God.
No.
Airplanes on Beaumont Camp.
Yeah.
No, they're all Portland, South Portland.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's what
that-
I'm thinking.
I bet it was.
Okay.
Joe, do you get your email if I send a text?
Either way, I'll give it either.
Okay, nice job, everybody.
Thank you for your
So is that meeting, just a couple housekeeping things, that meeting on the seventh is set.
3 to
Okay,
6.
3 to 6.
Can you tell Carl?
We're gonna just keep plowing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there will be someone or multiple publics at the board meeting.
Yes.
We're into the. Great job, everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes,
Move to adjourn,
motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we gotta consolidate all these.
All right.
Necessary drafts.
What's wrong with this?
Yeah.
10 minutes.